Whispers by the Haunted Lake. It was a moonless night, and the remote lakeside campground was shrouded in a thick, ghostly mist. Sarah and Mark, a young couple seeking a romantic getaway from the chaos of city life, had arrived earlier that day. They had expected serenity, the soothing sounds of lapping water, and the rustling of leaves under the starry sky. What they didn't expect was the creeping sense of dread that would soon engulf them. Their campsite was nestled beneath tall, gnarled trees, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. A feeble campfire flickered in the damp air, casting long, quivering shadows that danced across their faces. Sarah and Mark sat close, wrapped in blankets, their fingers intertwined, watching the inky waters of the lake. The night began quietly, and their laughter filled the chilly air as they reminisced about their shared adventures and future dreams. They marveled at the beauty of the lake and the isolation of their campsite, feeling as if they were the only souls for miles around. But then, as the clock's hands moved towards midnight, a change swept over the campground. The laughter died on their lips, replaced by an unsettling silence. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide and searching the darkness beyond the campfire's glow. Mark frowned. "Hear what?" "Whispers," Sarah replied, her voice trembling. "I could swear I heard whispers coming from the lake." Mark strained his ears, and soon he heard them too, a faint, haunting murmur as if 100 voices from the past were carried on the breeze. It was the kind of sound that made the hair on the back of one's neck stand on end. "Maybe it's just the wind," Mark tried to reassure her, but he couldn't mask the unease in his voice. Sarah, however, was not convinced. She rose from her seat, drawn to the edge of the lake as if by an invisible force. Mark followed her, the mist swallowing them whole as they ventured closer to the water's edge. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, and now they seemed to take form, like fragmented memories reaching out from the depths. Sarah and Mark exchanged a wary glance before stepping cautiously into the water, guided by the eerie voices. As they waded further, the lake seemed to swallow them, the water growing darker and colder. It was as if they were descending into another world, a realm where time and space were twisted and tormented. Shadows moved beneath the surface, darting this way and that, eluding their gaze. In the heart of the lake, they stumbled upon something that sent shivers down their spines, a sunken rowboat, barely visible beneath the ink-high waters. As they approached, they saw the outline of a journal, its pages weathered and yellowed by age. Sarah reached down and gingerly retrieved the journal. Its cover was etched with strange, ancient symbols that seemed to shimmer in the faint moonlight. She opened it, revealing pages filled with cryptic writings, drawings of eerie figures, and accounts of long-forgotten rituals. "The journal," Sarah whispered, her voice quivering with fear. "It must hold the key to these whispers, to this place." Mark nodded, his eyes fixed on the journal. "We need to find out more. We can't leave now." Their curiosity turned into obsession as they pored over the journal, deciphering its cryptic contents. The more they read, the more they realized the chilling truth. They had stumbled upon a forgotten cult that had once thrived on the lake's shores, conducting dark rituals to summon otherworldly entities. The whispers, they learned, were the echoes of those long-dead cultists, trapped in a never-ending cycle of torment. And now, Sarah and Mark had unwittingly become part of that cycle. As the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The mist thickened around them, and the shadows in the water took shape, shadowy figures with elongated limbs and hollow eyes, beckoning them to join their spectral congregation. Sarah and Mark clung to each other, their terror mounting, but it was too late to turn back. The lake had claimed them, body and soul, and there was no escape from the darkness that surrounded them. Then, in a heart-stopping moment, the lake's surface erupted with a blinding light, and a ghostly figure, clad in tattered robes, emerged from the water. It was the vengeful spirit of the cult's leader, seeking retribution for the intrusion into their cursed domain. "Leave this place," the spirit hissed, its voice a chorus of tortured souls, "or join us in eternal torment." Sarah and Mark tried to flee, but the lake's icy grip held them fast. They watched in horror as the spirit extended its bony hand, reaching for their trembling souls. In that moment, they knew there was no escape. As the mist closed in around them, the whispers grew louder and more frantic, merging with their own terrified screams. The couple was pulled beneath the surface, their cries silenced as they became part of the lake's accursed choir. And so, the remote lakeside campground remained, its tranquility shattered by the restless spirits that dwelled beneath the surface. The whispers would continue to haunt the misty nights, a warning to all who dared to seek what lay hidden in the depths, the thin line between curiosity and danger, where the past came back to haunt the living. And the haunted journal, forever submerged in the ink-high waters, would bear witness to the never-ending nightmare, a testament to the relentless power of the supernatural lurking just beneath the surface of our world. Whispers in the ancient woods. It was a night unlike any other, a foggy, moonless night that shrouded the dense, ancient forest in an eerie cloak of darkness. Among the towering trees and twisting underbrush, two figures moved cautiously, their steps muffled by the thick layer of fallen leaves. Jake, an experienced camper, led the way, his senses sharp and instincts honed by years of wilderness adventures. Beside him walked Lily, his adventurous younger sister, her wide eyes filled with excitement and trepidation. They had ventured deep into the heart of the forest, seeking an adventure that would test their courage and bond as siblings. What they didn't know was that this night would challenge them in ways they could never have imagined. The air was heavy with moisture, the fog clinging to their clothes like phantom fingers. The forest's nocturnal creatures stirred in the shadows, their rustlings and faint calls echoing through the trees. But there was something else, a sound that sent a chill down Jake's spine. "Do you hear that, Lily?" Jake asked, his voice low and tinged with unease. Lily paused, her eyes scanning the murky darkness. "What is it?" Whispers, soft, ghostly whispers, seemed to emanate from the very heart of the forest. They were elusive, like the echo of a long-forgotten conversation, yet unmistakably there. "I don't know," Jake muttered, his brow furrowing. "But we need to find out." With a shared look of curiosity and apprehension, they followed the whispers, guided by the haunting voices that seemed to lead them further into the labyrinthine depths of the woods. Each step they took led them deeper into the unknown, and the forest grew denser, the trees looming like ancient sentinels. As they ventured further, the world around them began to change. The trees seemed to warp and twist, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The forest floor became uneven, causing them to stumble and lose their sense of direction. The whispers persisted, growing louder and more distinct, as if beckoning them to an otherworldly gathering. The siblings' unease deepened with each passing moment. "Jake, something's not right," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Jake nodded, his eyes darting around, trying to discern their location. "I know, Lily. We shouldn't have followed those whispers." But it was too late to turn back. The forest had them in its grasp, and there was no escape from its tangled web of secrets. Hours passed, and the siblings became increasingly disoriented. The fog seemed to play tricks on their senses, distorting the world around them. The very ground beneath their feet appeared to shift and ripple like water, making it impossible to trust their own perception. And then, just as they thought they had lost all sense of direction, they stumbled upon it, the cursed tree. Its gnarled roots seemed to writhe like serpents, and its trunk was covered in etchings that told a sinister story, a story of a forgotten cult that had once thrived in these woods, conducting dark rituals to appease ancient, malevolent forces. The siblings approached the tree, their hearts pounding in their chests. The etchings seemed to come to life, glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. They couldn't tear their eyes away from the symbols, which seemed to pulse and shift before their very eyes. As they reached out to touch the tree, the whispers grew deafening, swirling around them like a vortex of lost souls. It was then that they heard it, the agonized wail of a woman, a tormented cry that seemed to reverberate through their very bones. They turned, their hearts racing. And there, amid the ethereal mist, they saw her, a spectral figure, her form faint and wavering. Her eyes, filled with sorrow and despair, locked onto theirs. "Help me," she pleaded, her voice a haunting echo. "Help me escape this eternal torment." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she realized the truth. The forest was a prison, a realm where the spirits of those long-dead cultists were trapped in an endless cycle of suffering. Jake and Lily, overcome with empathy, reached out to the spectral figure, their fingers brushing against the cold, intangible mist. But they could do nothing to ease her suffering, nothing to free her from the curse that bound her. As they stood there, helpless, the whispers grew louder, more frantic, and the forest seemed to close in around them, its ancient trees closing ranks as if to protect its secrets. In a final, chilling revelation, the cursed tree's etchings shifted to form a warning of the price they would pay for their intrusion into the forest's dark past. With a sense of mounting horror, Jake and Lily realized the forest would not release them. They were now part of its grim history, doomed to join the spectral chorus that haunted the ancient woods. The whispers of the forest grew louder, their voices merging with the anguished cries of the tormented spirits. Jake and Lily's own voices joined the spectral choir, their screams lost in the eternal night. And so, the dense, ancient forest stood as a testament to the vulnerability of humanity in the face of nature's primal mysteries. It remained a place of eerie whispers, a warning to all who dared to venture into its depths. The power of the unknown, the inscrutable forces that lurked beneath the surface of our world. The cursed tree, its etchings forever shifting and changing, continued to guard its secrets, while the restless spirits of the past and the doomed siblings became a part of the ever-growing, ever-haunting legend of the ancient woods. The Haunting Diary of Campsite 13. The isolated campsite lay deep within the forest, a clearing surrounded by looming, shadowy trees that seemed to whisper secrets to anyone who dared to listen. Amy, Mike, and Lisa, a group of college friends, had ventured into the wilderness seeking adventure, unaware that the chilling tale of Campsite 13 would soon become their own. The evening sun cast long, eerie shadows as they set up their campfire. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees standing sentinel like ancient guardians of a forgotten past. Excitement filled the air as they shared stories and laughter, unaware of the ominous destiny that awaited them. It was Amy who discovered it, a tattered diary hidden beneath a moss-covered rock. Its pages were weathered and yellowed with age, the cover adorned with cryptic symbols that sent shivers down their spine. "Look at this, guys," Amy exclaimed, her voice trembling. "It's an old diary. Maybe it'll tell us something about this place." With a sense of morbid curiosity, they gathered around the diary, its fragile pages revealing the dark history of Campsite 13. The diary belonged to a woman named Sarah, who had camped there many years ago. Her entries spoke of strange occurrences, whispers in the night, and an unsettling feeling that the forest was alive with malevolent forces. As they read, the forest seemed to grow darker, the rustling of leaves overhead taking on an ominous tone. Sarah's diary told of a forbidden ritual conducted by a cult that had once thrived in these woods, a ritual meant to summon otherworldly entities. She described the symbols they had carved into the trees, a mark of their allegiance to the dark forces. Lisa shivered, her eyes darting nervously between the trees. "We shouldn't be here. This place is cursed." But Mike dismissed her fears, his curiosity piqued. "Come on, guys, it's just an old diary. There's no such thing as curses." As night fell and the campfire crackled, the forest seemed to come alive with an eerie energy. Strange, otherworldly symbols began to appear on the trees surrounding their campsite, glowing with an unnatural light. The symbols shifted and danced, casting eerie shadows that danced in the flickering firelight. Tension hung in the air as the friends exchanged nervous glances. The forest whispered secrets to them, its chilling voices mingling with the echoes of Sarah's diary. It was as if the very trees were trying to communicate, warning them of the dark forces that still lingered. Suddenly, the campfire went out, plunging them into darkness. Panic set in as they fumbled for flashlights, their beams revealing the symbols etched into the trees with an eerie, malevolent glow. And then they heard it, the sound of ghostly whispers, growing louder and more insistent. The forest seemed to come alive with unseen figures, shadows darting in and out of their flashlight beams. Amy's voice quivered as she whispered, "We have to leave, now." But before they could make their escape, a presence emerged from the darkness, a spectral figure clad in tattered robes, its eyes hollow and filled with malevolence. It was the vengeful spirit of the cult's leader, seeking justice for the intrusion into their cursed domain. "Leave this place," the spirit hissed, its voice a chorus of tortured souls, "or face the consequences of your curiosity." Fear gripped them as they scrambled to their feet, fleeing into the forest in a blind panic. The whispers pursued them, echoing through the trees, and the symbols on the trees seemed to come to life, reaching out with spectral fingers. As they ran, they stumbled upon an ancient, decaying altar, a site where the cult had once conducted their forbidden rituals. The symbols on the altar pulsed with a sinister energy, and the air grew thick with dread. In their desperation, they attempted to appease the vengeful spirit, offering apologies for their intrusion and vowing to leave the forest forever. But the spirit was relentless, its hollow eyes fixed on them with an unyielding gaze. Their pleas fell on deaf ears as the forest itself seemed to close in around them, the very ground beneath their feet shifting and twisting. The symbols on the trees glowed brighter, and the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of torment and despair. With a final, bone-chilling wail, the vengeful spirit unleashed its wrath, and the forest erupted with blinding light. Shadows swirled around them, and they were pulled into an otherworldly vortex, their screams drowned out by the relentless voices of the past. And so, the isolated campsite remained, a haunting reminder of the consequences of past actions and the price of curiosity. The forest whispered its secrets to all who dared to enter, a warning that some knowledge is better left undiscovered. The diary of Sarah, forever bound to the cursed campsite, continued to tell the chilling tale of Campsite 13, a tale of dark rituals, malevolent forces, and the enduring power of the unknown. The symbols on the trees remained etched in the wood, a mark of the forest's ancient malevolence, a symbol that would continue to draw curious souls into its grasp, where the past and present merged in an eternal dance of terror. The curse of Campsite 7. The remote campground lay shrouded in darkness, far removed from the comfort of civilization. David and Emily, a couple yearning for adventure, had embarked on a journey into the heart of the unknown. But little did they know that their desire for excitement would lead them to a place where the line between reality and horror blurred beyond recognition. The night sky above was eerily devoid of stars, as if the very heavens themselves had abandoned this forsaken place. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the faint rustling of leaves and the distant murmur of a hidden stream. It was a silence that sent shivers down their spines, a silence that seemed to whisper of unspeakable secret. As David and Emily set up their campfire, they exchanged nervous glances. There was something about this place, something that felt undeniably wrong. Emily had heard tales of a curse that had plagued Campsite 7 for generations, stories of vengeful spirits seeking retribution for trespassing on sacred ground. But David, ever the skeptic, brushed off her concerns with a reassuring smile. "There's no such thing as curses, Em. It's just local superstition." With a sense of trepidation, they settled in for the night, their campfire casting flickering shadows that danced like malevolent spirits in the inky darkness. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it sinister secrets and a foreboding sense of impending doom. As they huddled together, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She glanced over her shoulder into the impenetrable darkness beyond the campfire's glow, her heart pounding with unease. It was then that she saw them, shadowy figures lurking just beyond the edge of their vision, their forms indistinct yet undeniably malevolent. David," Emily stammered, her voice quivering. "There's something out there. I saw shadows." David's expression shifted from reassurance to concern as he peered into the darkness. But he saw nothing, only the silent, looming trees that seemed to close in around them. It's just your imagination playing tricks on you," he said, his voice a feeble attempt to dismiss her fear. But Emily was not convinced. She couldn't ignore the sinister whispers that seemed to carry on the wind, voices that spoke of long-forgotten sins and the pursuit of relentless justice. As the night wore on, the shadows grew bolder, their movements more deliberate. David and Emily tried to ignore them, focusing on their campfire as if it were a lifeline to the real world. But the shadows continued to encroach upon their sanctuary, their movements accompanied by an eerie, haunting laughter that sent shivers down their spines. With growing desperation, Emily pleaded with David to leave, to abandon Campsite 7 and its sinister history. But David, stubborn and unwilling to admit defeat, refused to yield to fear. And then, as the clock's hands inched toward midnight, the shadows coalesced into tangible forms, apparitions clad in tattered, ethereal robes. Their eyes burned with an unquenchable rage as they circled the campfire, their movements a sinister dance of malevolence. Emily's voice trembled as she whispered, "We have to leave, David. We're in danger." But before they could make their escape, a figure emerged from the darkness, a spectral entity that radiated an aura of dread. It was the spirit of the campsite's original guardian, the one who had invoked the curse that now haunted the land. "Leave this place," the spirit hissed, its voice a chorus of tormented souls, "or face the consequences of your trespass." David and Emily, their fear palpable, tried to flee, but the spectral entities closed in around them, their ethereal hands reaching out with a chilling touch. The sinister whispers grew louder, their voices a cacophony of rage and despair. In a desperate bid for survival, David and Emily stumbled upon an ancient, weathered stone altar, a site where the curse had been invoked centuries ago. The symbols etched into the stone pulsed with a malevolent energy, and the air grew thick with dread. Kneeling before the altar, they begged for mercy, their voices trembling with terror. But the spirits were unyielding. their hollow eyes fixed on the trespassers with an unwavering gaze. And then, in a final, horrifying revelation, the sinister whispers took form, rising from the shadows to engulf them. The spirits unleashed their wrath, and the world around them erupted with blinding light. Emily's screams joined the relentless chorus of the spirits, their voices merging in a symphony of torment. And so, the remote campground remained, a place of terror and unending darkness, a warning to all who dared to seek adventure in the face of the unknown. The curse of Campsite 7 lived on, a testament to the consequences of trespassing on sacred ground and the relentless pursuit of justice. The sinister whispers continued to carry on the wind, a haunting reminder of the darkness that dwelled in the heart of the forest. David and Emily's fate was sealed, their spirits forever bound to the cursed land, where the past and the present merged in an eternal dance of horror. The haunting howl of the wilderness, the secluded camping spot lay deep within the heart of the forest, a place where the world outside ceased to exist. Sarah, a nature enthusiast, had sought solace and communion with the wild, and she had brought her faithful companion, Max, a loyal and adventurous dog. Little did they know that their tranquil escape would soon become a nightmarish descent into the primal depths of fear. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest fell into an eerie silence, the stillness broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves and the soft breath of the wind. Sarah and Max had set up their campfire, its flickering flames casting long, wavering shadows that danced like spectral phantoms. They shared a sense of peace, the bond between human and animal palpable as they sat side by side, gazing into the depths of the wilderness. But that tranquility was shattered by a sound that sent shivers down their spines, a bone-chilling howl that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the woods. Max's ears perked up, his fur bristling with unease. Sarah's heart raced as she clutched her loyal companion. The howl was unlike anything she had ever heard, a mournful, anguished cry that echoed through the trees, filling the air with an aura of dread. "Did you hear that, Max?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Max's eyes, filled with uncertainty, met hers, and he let out a low growl, his protective instincts kicking in. There was an intelligence in his gaze, a recognition that something was amiss in the woods. As the minutes passed, the forest remained shrouded in silence, the oppressive stillness hanging heavy in the air. Sarah and Max exchanged wary glances, unable to shake the sense of impending danger that loomed like a shadow in the night. And then it happened again, the howl, louder and more haunting than before, as if it were drawing closer. Max's behavior grew increasingly erratic, his growls turning into panicked whimpers. Sarah, her heart pounding with fear, strained her ears to listen. The howling was accompanied by a strange, rhythmic chanting, a chorus of voices that seemed to converge from all directions. The forest itself seemed to come alive with an otherworldly energy. "Max, we need to go," Sarah said, her voice trembling. But as they tried to pack up and leave, an oppressive force seemed to envelop them, holding them in place. Max's whimpers grew more desperate, his eyes darting frantically through the trees. Then, in a terrifying moment, the forest seemed to part, revealing a clearing illuminated by an eerie, ghostly light. Sarah and Max stood at the edge of the clearing, their eyes widening in terror as they beheld a nightmarish sight. A circle of ancient stones surrounded a decaying altar, a sight that reeked of dark rituals and the presence of malevolent forces. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she saw the symbols etched into the stones, symbols that spoke of a long-forgotten cult that had once thrived in the heart of the forest. As the forest's unearthly voices grew louder, the symbols on the stones pulsed with an otherworldly energy, casting grotesque, shifting shadows that danced with unnatural life. The chanting reached a fevered pitch, and Sarah and Max found themselves at the mercy of a supernatural force. They watched in horror as a spectral figure emerged from the darkness, a vengeful spirit, clad in tattered robes, its eyes hollow and filled with malevolence. "Leave this place," the spirit hissed, its voice a chorus of tortured souls, "or join us in eternal torment." Sarah and Max, their fear overwhelming, tried to flee, but the supernatural force held them fast. The forest seemed to close in around them, its ancient trees closing ranks as if to protect its secrets. Desperate and trapped, they were unable to escape the relentless pursuit of the vengeful spirits. Max's whimpers turned to panicked barks as he tried to protect his beloved owner from the encroaching darkness. And then, in a final, terrifying revelation, the howling reached a crescendo, the night erupting with blinding light. Sarah and Max's world was torn asunder, their screams lost in the relentless voices of the forest. And so, the secluded camping spot remained, a place where the line between reality and the supernatural blurred beyond recognition. The haunting howl of the wilderness continued to echo through the woods, a warning to all who dared to seek adventure in the heart of the unknown, a warning of the vulnerability of humans in the wilderness, and the primal fear of the unknown. The ancient symbols etched into the rocks continued to bear witness to the horrors of that night, a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice by the vengeful spirits that dwelled in the depths of the forest. Sarah and Max were forever bound to the cursed land, where the past and the present merged in an eternal symphony of terror. The haunting of Whispering Pines. The deserted campground lay cloaked in darkness, the only illumination coming from the faint glow of the moon, struggling to penetrate the thick canopy of swaying pines. A group of friends, Alex, Sam, and Emma, had embarked on a camping trip seeking adventure, but they were about to stumble upon a chilling mystery that defied the boundaries of time and the living. The night was pitch black, and the silence of the deserted campground was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves and the haunting whisper of the wind through the towering pines. As they made their way through the labyrinthine woods, they stumbled upon an abandoned campsite, frozen in time like a relic from the past. Flickering lanterns hung from the surrounding trees, casting eerie, shifting shadows that danced like phantoms. The campfire lay unattended, its flames flickering in the eerie stillness of the night. But what sent shivers down their spines was the sense of déjà vu, the overwhelming feeling that they had been here before in another lifetime. "This is strange," Sam muttered, his voice trembling. Emma nodded, her gaze fixed on the eerie campsite. "It's like we've walked into a different time." Alex, ever the skeptic, tried to dismiss their unease. "Come on, guys, it's probably just some old campsite that someone forgot to clean up." But the air was charged with an otherworldly energy, and the friends couldn't shake the feeling that something was profoundly wrong. As they explored the campsite further, they stumbled upon a journal, its pages yellowed with age but filled with entries that seemed to have been written moments ago. The journal spoke of the campers' joyous arrival at Whispering Pines, their laughter and camaraderie by the campfire, and their plans for a weekend filled with adventure. But as the friends read on, the entries grew increasingly ominous, describing strange occurrences, flickering lanterns, whispered voices in the night, and a deep sense of dread that settled over the campsite. Emma's voice quivered as she read aloud. "It's like they were living our exact experience." Alex scoffed, trying to maintain his composure. "It's just a weird coincidence. People have similar camping trips all the time." But the atmosphere around them seemed to thicken, and the lanterns began to flicker more erratically, casting eerie shadows that danced like restless spirits. As the friends sat around the campfire, they were overwhelmed by a sense of déjà vu that grew stronger with each passing moment. The air grew colder, and the forest seemed to come alive with spectral whispers, a chorus of voices that spoke of long-forgotten stories and the persistence of the past. And then it happened, an unearthly howl that echoed through the trees, freezing their blood in their veins. The spectral vision of the campers came to life before their eyes, their laughter turning to anguished screams as they relived a night of terror. The friends watched in horror as the campers were consumed by a darkness that seemed to rise from the very earth beneath them. Their faces contorted in agony, their voices a chorus of despair, as they were pulled into an abyss that defied comprehension. "Run!" Sam screamed, his voice filled with terror. But the campground had become a prison, a place where the past and present merged in an eternal dance of horror. The spectral campers turned toward Alex, Sam, and Emma with hollow eyes, their arms outstretched in a relentless pursuit. With desperation gripping their hearts, the friends fled through the labyrinthine woods, their footsteps echoing the terror of those who had come before them. The ghostly campers pursued them with an unearthly determination, their howls of despair echoing through the night. As they ran, they stumbled upon an ancient, weathered altar, a site of dark rituals where the campers had once sought to commune with the spirits of the forest. The symbols etched into the stone pulsed with a malevolent energy, and the air grew thick with dread. Desperation gave way to a frantic plea for mercy as the friends knelt before the altar, their voices trembling with terror. But the spectral campers were unyielding, their hollow eyes fixed on the trespassers with an unwavering gaze. And then, in a final, horrifying revelation, the campers unleashed their wrath, and the forest erupted with blinding light. The world around them shattered, and the spectral vision of the past swallowed them whole, their screams lost in the relentless voices of the campground. And so, Whispering Pines remained a place of haunting mystery, where the past lingered like an eternal specter, and the veil between the living and the dead was thin. The journal, forever bound to the cursed campground, continued to tell the chilling tale of the phantom campers, a tale of deja vu and the relentless persistence of the past. The flickering lanterns continued to cast eerie shadows that danced like restless spirits, a haunting reminder of the friends' harrowing encounter with the spectral campers. Their fate was sealed, their spirits forever bound to the campground, where the past and the present merged in an eternal symphony of terror. The Curse of the Unseen Waters. The remote campsite lay in the shadow of a cursed, stagnant pond, its inky surface reflecting the cloudy night sky like a dark mirror. Tom and Lisa, a couple with an insatiable curiosity for the supernatural, had ventured into the wilderness seeking to quench their thirst for the unknown. Little did they know that their fascination would unleash a malevolent force that defied comprehension. The cloudy night hung heavy with foreboding as they set up their campsite, the air filled with a palpable tension that seemed to emanate from the cursed pond. The very water itself appeared to pulse with an unnatural darkness, a presence that clawed at the edges of their senses. Tom and Lisa had always been drawn to the occult, their fascination with the supernatural leading them down a path of danger and discovery. As they sat beside their campfire, the flickering flames cast eerie shadows that danced like phantoms, their faces reflecting a mixture of trepidation and excitement. Lisa's eyes gleamed with curiosity as she pulled an old book from her backpack, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and incantations. "This is it, Tom. The ritual we've been searching for. The one that will unlock the secrets of this cursed place." Tom, ever the skeptic, hesitated. "Are you sure about this, Lisa? We don't know what we're dealing with." But Lisa's determination was unwavering, and she proceeded with the forbidden ritual, a chant that called upon the spirits that dwelled within the cursed pond. The very air seemed to thicken as the incantation filled the night, and the pond responded with ripples that defied explanation. As the last words of the incantation left Lisa's lips, a profound stillness fell over the campsite, as if the very forest held its breath. The clouds above seemed to part, revealing a pale, sickly moon that cast an eerie glow over the pond. And then it happened. A spectral figure rose from the depths of the pond, its form ethereal and menacing. It was a spirit bound by centuries of anguish, its eyes hollow and filled with malevolence. "Who dares awaken me?" the spirit hissed, its voice a chilling whisper that sent shivers down Tom and Lisa's spines. Fear gripped them as they realized the magnitude of their mistake. They had meddled with forces far beyond their understanding, and the consequences were about to unfold. The malevolent spirit's form twisted and contorted as it surged towards them, its spectral fingers reaching out with a deathly touch. Tom and Lisa, their hearts pounding with terror, tried to flee, but an unseen force held them in place. As the spirit drew closer, the cursed pond itself seemed to come alive, its inky waters rising like a malevolent wave. The very air became charged with an otherworldly energy, and unsettling whispers began to rise from the depths, a cacophony of despair and torment. Desperation gave way to a frantic plea for mercy as Tom and Lisa knelt before the cursed pond, their voices trembling with terror. But the malevolent spirit was unyielding, its hollow eyes fixed on the trespassers with an unwavering gaze. And then, in a final, horrifying revelation, the cursed pond unleashed its wrath. Tom and Lisa were engulfed by a darkness so profound that it seemed to consume their very souls. Their screams were lost in the relentless voices of the pond, their bodies disappearing into the inky depths. And so, the remote campsite remained, a place of malevolence and despair, a testament to the consequences of meddling with the supernatural. The book of forbidden rituals lay abandoned, its pages filled with warnings that had gone unheeded. The cursed pond continued to reflect the cloudy night sky, its surface a dark mirror that concealed the malevolent spirit within. The unsettling whispers that rose from its depths were a haunting reminder of the folly of Tom and Lisa, a warning to all who dared to seek the unknown. The consequences of their actions had become an eternal curse, a price paid in blood and anguish. The cursed pond held their souls in eternal torment, where the past and the present merged in an eternal symphony of horror. The echoes of abandonment. The derelict campground lay shrouded in thick fog, its crumbling remains a haunting testament to a past long forgotten. Rachel and her group of urban explorers had embarked on a journey into the unknown, drawn by the allure of an abandoned campsite with a chilling mystery that begged to be unraveled. The fog clung to the skeletal trees like a shroud, obscuring the campsite's decaying structures and casting an eerie pallor over the desolation. Rachel, her heart pounding with anticipation, led the way as they ventured deeper into the abandoned campground. The tents, weathered and crumbling, stood like silent sentinels of a bygone era, their fabric sagging under the weight of years of neglect. Forgotten belongings lay scattered about, as if their owners had vanished into thin air. It was as though time itself had come to a standstill in this forsaken place. As Rachel's group explored the campsite, a sense of disquiet settled over them like a weight on their chests. The very air seemed to thicken with the silence of abandonment, broken only by the muffled sounds of their footsteps on the damp ground. "Can you feel it?" Rachel whispered to her companions, her voice trembling. They nodded in unison, a sense of claustrophobia closing in around them. It was as if the campsite itself were watching, waiting to reveal its chilling secrets. As they continued their exploration, they stumbled upon a diary, its pages yellowed with age but filled with entries that told a haunting tale. The diary spoke of a group of campers who had arrived at the site with high spirits and a sense of camaraderie. But as they settled in, the entries grew increasingly ominous, describing strange occurrences, whispers in the night, flickering lanterns, and a deep sense of unease that settled over the campsite like a shroud. Rachel's voice quivered as she read aloud. They sensed something lurking in the fog, something that refused to reveal itself. The fog outside the tents grew thicker, as if the very air were closing in around them. It was as though the campsite itself were alive, its past a dark presence that refused to be forgotten. As night fell and the fog thickened, the group huddled together, their sense of unease growing with each passing moment. The lanterns they had brought cast feeble glows that barely pierced the gloom, and the fog outside seemed to swallow the campsite whole. And then it happened, an eerie, otherworldly howl that echoed through the fog, freezing their blood in their veins. The fog itself seemed to come alive, twisting and writhing as if possessed by a malevolent force. Fear gripped them as they realized that the echoes of the past were returning, and the horrors of abandonment were about to resurface. The very ground beneath them trembled, and the fog grew thicker, obscuring their vision until they could barely see their own hands. Rachel's heart pounded as she clutched the diary, the entries describing the campers' descent into madness as they were stalked by an unseen presence. It was a presence that now seemed to encircle them, its malevolence palpable. Desperation gave way to a frantic plea for escape as the group tried to flee the campsite. But the fog had become an impenetrable barrier. The howling grew louder, its source unseen but undeniably malevolent. As they ran, the fog seemed to twist and contort around them, its fingers reaching out with a deathly touch. The campsite itself became a labyrinth of despair, a place where the past and present merged in an eternal dance of horror. And then, in a final, horrifying revelation, the fog unleashed its wrath. Rachel and her companions were engulfed by a darkness so profound that it seemed to consume their very souls. Their screams were lost in the relentless howling of the fog, their bodies disappearing into the suffocating embrace of the campsite's abandonment. And so, the derelict campground remained, a place of isolation and despair, where the echoes of abandonment lingered like a curse. The diary, forever bound to the forsaken site, continued to tell the chilling tale of those who had ventured into the fog, a tale of isolation and the lingering scars of the past. The fog, thick and suffocating, continued to envelop the abandoned campsite, its tendrils reaching out like malevolent fingers. The horrors of the past were etched into the very fabric of the fog, a warning to all who dared to seek answers in the depths of the unknown. The consequences of their curiosity had become an eternal curse, a price paid in the isolation and despair of the abandoned campground. Rachel and her companions were forever bound to the fog, where the past and the present merged in an eternal symphony of terror. The whispers in the night, the dense forest, its ancient trees reaching toward the heavens like spectral giants, lay cloaked in darkness on a stormy, moonless night. Mark and Sophie, along with their group of intrepid hikers, had embarked on an adventure into the unknown, but little did they know that the heart of the forest held secrets more horrifying than their wildest nightmares. The storm raged overhead, the sound of raindrops pummeling the leaves like an ominous drumbeat. Mark and Sophie, their determination unwavering, led the way as they ventured deeper into the labyrinthine forest. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. As the group pressed on, they began to hear sinister whispers, an eerie chorus of voices that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the forest. The whispers were faint at first, like distant echoes of a forgotten past, but they grew louder and more insistent with each step. "Did you hear that?" Sophie asked, her voice trembling. Mark nodded, his heart pounding with unease. "It's like the forest is trying to tell us something." The whispers seemed to beckon them deeper into the woods, drawing them in like moths to a flame. The group followed, unable to resist the allure of the unknown. It was as though the very forest itself had come alive, its secrets calling out to them in a language they could not comprehend. The twisted, contorted trees that surrounded them seemed to watch with malevolent intent, their gnarled branches casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. The forest itself had become a living, breathing entity, and the hikers were its unwitting prey. As they ventured deeper, the storm grew fiercer, the rain pelting them relentlessly as if the very elements were conspiring to keep them within the forest's grasp. The whispers, now a cacophony of voices, filled the air with an oppressive sense of dread. The group began to lose their way, the labyrinthine forest closing in around them like a suffocating nightmare. Panic gave way to frantic desperation as they tried to retrace their steps. But the forest seemed to shift and change, its paths twisting and contorting like a living maze. And then, in a horrifying moment, they realized they were not alone. A malevolent force lurked in the shadows, its presence felt but unseen. It was a relentless pursuer, a predator that seemed to revel in their fear. The whispers, now a tormenting chorus, seemed to converge on them, drowning out all other sound. The forest itself seemed to close in around them, the trees leaning in like predators ready to pounce. Sophie's voice trembled as she cried out, "We have to get out of here." But the forest was relentless, its grip unyielding. The group ran, their footsteps echoing the terror of those who had come before them. The relentless force pursued them with an otherworldly determination, its presence a shadowy specter that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. As they fled, the forest seemed to come alive with unnatural energy. The very trees themselves seemed to twist and contort, their branches reaching out like skeletal arms to ensnare them. The whispers grew louder, their voices a cacophony of despair and torment. And then, in a final, horrifying revelation, the malevolent force revealed itself, a spectral entity that defied comprehension. Its form twisted and contorted, its eyes hollow and filled with malevolence. "You are mine," it hissed, its voice a chorus of tortured souls. Desperation gave way to a frantic plea for mercy as the group knelt before the malevolent force, their voices trembling with terror. But the entity was unyielding, its hollow eyes fixed on the trespassers with an unwavering gaze. And then, in a blinding flash of lightning, the forest erupted with a deafening roar. Mark and Sophie's world was torn asunder, their screams lost in the relentless voices of the forest. And so, the dense forest remained, a place of inescapable dread and unspeakable horror. The whispers continued to echo through the woods, a warning to all who dared to seek adventure in the heart of the unknown, a warning of the power of nature's secrets and the consequences of venturing too far. The twisted, contorted trees continued to watch with malevolent intent, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Mark and Sophie were forever bound to the forest, where the past and the present merged in an eternal symphony of terror. The timeless echoes, the isolated campsite sat under a starless sky, its haunting silence broken only by the murmur of a flickering campfire. Michael, Kate, James, and their group of friends had embarked on a camping trip seeking adventure, but they were about to experience a nightmarish journey into the very fabric of time itself. The stars, usually a celestial tapestry above, were absent, as though the very universe itself had withdrawn from this forsaken place. The campfire flickered, its flames casting eerie shadows that danced like spectral apparitions. The air was heavy with an otherworldly stillness, and the friends huddled together, their excitement tinged with unease. As they sat around the campfire, a sense of temporal dislocation washed over them, as if the very world around them were shifting and changing. Time seemed to lose its meaning, and they couldn't shake the feeling that something was profoundly wrong. Michael, the group's natural leader, was the first to speak, his voice trembling with uncertainty. "Did anyone else feel that? It's like time is unraveling." Kate nodded, her eyes filled with apprehension. "I thought I saw something or someone just beyond the firelight. But when I looked again, There was nothing there. James, ever the skeptic, tried to dismiss their unease. It's just our imagination playing tricks on us. We're in the middle of nowhere, after all. But the air was charged with an otherworldly energy, and the campfire seemed to defy logic and time, its flames flickering in a rhythm that defied comprehension. As they continued to sit by the fire, the very fabric of reality seemed to shift. The friends found themselves caught in repeating loops of time, as if they were trapped in a never-ending cycle of déjà vu. They would hear the crackling of the campfire, then the sound of their own voices speaking the same words over and over again. It was as though the echoes of the past were resurfacing, haunting the campsite with their relentless persistence. Michael's voice echoed through time as he said, "I thought I saw something ... or someone just beyond the firelight." Kate's words were an eerie repetition, but when I looked again, there was nothing there. James's skepticism echoed through the night. It's just our imagination playing tricks on us. The friends were caught in a nightmarish loop, their actions and words repeating like a macabre record stuck in a never-ending groove. They tried to break free, to escape the relentless cycle, but each attempt only led them back to the same moment, as if time itself were a prison from which they could not escape. As the night wore on, the campfire's flickering flames seemed to dance with a malevolent intent. The friends felt as though they were being watched, not by the living, but by the echoes of past campers who had experienced the same haunting cycle. And then, in a horrifying revelation, the residual spirits of previous campers began to materialize around them, their forms ethereal and menacing. They were trapped in a never-ending nightmare, their faces twisted in terror as they relived the same moments over and over again. The friends tried to speak to them, to offer comfort and assistance, but the spirits were trapped in their own torment, unable to hear or comprehend. They were caught in a never-ending cycle of terror, their existence a haunting reminder of the relentless persistence of the past. Desperation gave way to a frantic attempt to break free from the haunting cycle. Michael, Kate, and James ran from the campsite, their footsteps echoing the terror of those who had come before them. But each path they took only led them back to the same moment, as if the forest itself conspired to keep them trapped. As the campfire's flames continued to flicker with malevolence, the friends realized that they were powerless to escape the relentless echoes of the past. The very fabric of time seemed to unravel around them, and they were caught in an eternal symphony of terror. And then, in a final, horrifying revelation, the campsite itself seemed to come alive with an otherworldly energy. The trees swayed in a sinister dance, their branches reaching out like skeletal arms to ensnare them. The air was filled with a cacophony of voices, the echoes of past campers crying out in despair. Michael, Kate, and James were engulfed by a darkness so profound that it seemed to consume their very souls. Their screams were lost in the relentless voices of the campsite, their bodies disappearing into the never-ending cycle of time. And so, the isolated campsite remained, a place of haunting echoes and eternal torment. The campfire continued to flicker with malevolence, its flames a reminder of the friends who had ventured into the timeless abyss. The consequences of their curiosity had become an eternal curse, a price paid in the haunting echoes of the campsite. Michael, Kate, and James were forever bound to the relentless cycle of time, where the past and the present merged in an eternal symphony of terror. In the heart of a dense, shadowy forest, where the trees stood like ancient sentinels and the moonlight rarely dared to pierce the thick canopy, a remote and eerie camping site awaited its unwitting visitors. This was no ordinary forest. It was haunted by a history marred with darkness, and it harbored secrets that the world had long forgotten. Sarah and Mark, an adventurous couple in their late 20s, decided to embark on a romantic camping trip in the wilderness. Their love was unwavering, and the prospect of spending time together amidst nature's embrace excited them. Armed with a backpack full of provisions and a passion for adventure, they ventured into the heart of the ominous woods. Their journey began with excitement and laughter, but the forest had other plans. Before long, they found themselves disoriented and lost in the labyrinth of twisted trees and eerie shadows. The forest seemed to whisper to them, its branches reaching out like skeletal fingers to pull them deeper into its enigmatic grasp. As the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness settled in, fear crept into their hearts. They knew they needed shelter and stumbled upon a clearing, a small pocket of respite in the midst of the oppressive forest. There, they set up their tent and hoped that morning would bring clarity. But the night held secrets that refused to stay hidden. As they lay in their tent, the air grew icy, and strange voices whispered in the wind. Sarah clutched Mark's arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mark strained his ears, trying to decipher the whispers. "It's probably just the wind," he said, trying to reassure himself as much as her. But it wasn't the wind. It was something far more sinister, a chorus of voices from beyond the veil of the living. Ghostly apparitions swirled around the campsite, their mournful wails sending shivers down Sarah and Mark's spines. These were the lost souls of those who had ventured into the haunted forest before, souls forever trapped in its malevolent grip. As the night wore on, the apparitions grew more aggressive, their ghostly forms inching closer to the trembling couple. Mark and Sarah clung to each other, tears streaming down their faces as they realized the dire nature of their predicament. Just when hope seemed lost, a raspy voice broke through the cacophony of the restless spirits. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, dripping with melancholy. Startled, Sarah and Mark peered outside their tent to see an old man with a long, tangled beard and hollow eyes. He leaned on a gnarled wooden staff, his presence an eerie blend of foreboding and wisdom. "Who are you?" Mark demanded, his voice quivering. "I am Elijah," the old man replied, his voice a haunting echo in the darkness. "And I am the last living soul to have wandered into this forsaken forest and lived to tell the tale." Elijah's story unfolded like a macabre fairy tale, a tale of curses and lost love, of betrayal and revenge. He revealed that the camping site they had stumbled upon was no ordinary clearing but the very heart of the forest's malevolence, a place where the spirits of the wronged sought to exact their vengeance. As the night waned, Elijah's words painted a horrifying picture of the campsite's tragic history. Sarah and Mark learned that the forest had been home to a community long ago, a community that had trespassed on the land of an ancient, vengeful spirit. The spirit had cursed them, and their souls had become eternally bound to the forest, forever tormented by the darkness they had unleashed. Sarah and Mark listened in aghast horror as Elijah spoke of how those who ventured into the cursed camping site met a fate worse than death. The spirits hungered for companionship, and anyone who strayed into their domain would become a part of their never-ending torment. As the first light of dawn broke through the forest canopy, Sarah and Mark knew they had to escape the haunted camping site or share the same wretched fate as those who came before them. With Elijah as their guide, they navigated the treacherous terrain, stepping lightly through the web of ghostly apparitions. The forest seemed to resist their departure, its branches reaching out to ensnare them, but they pressed on, their resolve unbroken. With every step, the forest grew quieter, and the mournful wails of the lost souls faded into the distance. Finally, they emerged from the darkness of the haunted forest, the air suddenly crisp and refreshing. Behind them, the forest loomed like a brooding specter, its secrets buried deep within its ancient heart. Sarah and Mark never spoke of their harrowing night in the haunted camping site again, but the memory would haunt their dreams for years to come. They had ventured into the darkness, and for a brief moment, it had threatened to consume them. It was a reminder that some places were best left unexplored, that curiosity could lead to consequences beyond imagination. As they walked away from the forest, they clung to each other, grateful to have escaped with their lives. They knew they had been lucky, that not everyone who entered that cursed place had the same fortune. The haunted camping site would forever remain a sinister enigma, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead grew thin, and where the consequences of trespassing in forbidden places were all too real. In a remote, forsaken corner of the world, where the chilling whispers of the wind danced through the trees, there lay an unsettling camping site, nestled on the shores of a cursed lake. This was no ordinary lake. Its waters held secrets buried deep beneath the surface, secrets that had festered for decades. 4 friends, Alex, Emma, Mike, and Lisa, found themselves drawn to this eerie destination. They had been inseparable during their school years, but life had scattered them to the winds. Now, they sought to rekindle their friendship with a camping trip that would, unbeknownst to them, lead them into the heart of darkness. The day they arrived was shrouded in mist, and the lake was like a sheet of glass, reflecting nothing but foreboding gray skies. The camping site had an air of abandonment, as if it had been forgotten by time itself. Broken tents and rusted camping gear littered the area, remnants of past adventurers who had vanished without a trace. As they set up their camp, unease settled upon them like a heavy fog. The lake's waters were calm, but something about them seemed unnatural, as if they held the memories of all those who had disappeared within their depths. That evening, As they huddled around a flickering campfire, Alex noticed something peculiar out on the lake. A line of floating lanterns appeared, their soft, ghostly glow casting an eerie light on the water. They moved in a slow, deliberate procession, like lost souls searching for their way home. "Did you guys see that?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. The others turned their gaze to the lake, their faces etched with confusion and fear. Emma whispered, "It's just an illusion. The lake does strange things to your mind." But they couldn't tear their eyes away. The lanterns drew closer, and as they did, ghostly apparitions materialized around them, figures in old-fashioned camping gear, their faces pale and twisted in anguish. Mike's voice quivered as he spoke. "This can't be real. It's got to be some sort of trick." Lisa, however, had a different theory. She had always been drawn to the mysterious and supernatural. "I think they're trying to tell us something," she said, her voice barely audible. As if in response, the apparitions began to speak, their voices carrying across the water like a mournful symphony. They told a tale of a camping trip gone horribly wrong, of a group of friends just like them who had ventured to this very spot decades ago. They spoke of whispers in the night, of eerie shadows in the woods, and of a malevolent force that had torn them apart, one by one. The friends sat in horrified silence, listening to the chilling tale. They couldn't deny the resemblance between the apparitions and themselves. The same number of friends, the same desire for adventure, and now the same haunted fate. It was then that a realization struck Alex. "The lake," he said, his voice trembling, "it's not cursed. It's angry." The others turned to him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Emma asked. Alex explained that the lake had been a witness to a terrible event many years ago. The friends who had vanished here had left behind a trail of guilt and betrayal. Their secrets had poisoned the very waters of the lake, and now the spirits sought retribution. The apparitions drew closer, their mournful gazes fixed upon the four friends. As they did, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. The campsite seemed to come alive, tent stakes twisting like skeletal fingers, and the lake's waters roiled in anger. "We have to make amends," Alex said, his voice determined. "We have to confront our guilt and apologize for what happened here." With that, the friends embarked on a desperate journey to uncover the truth. They retraced the steps of the ill-fated campers, piecing together the events of that fateful night. Along the way, they encountered eerie manifestations, ghostly echoes of the past that served as grim reminders of what had transpired. The deeper they delved into the darkness, the more they realized that the sins of the past had taken physical form. The malevolent force that had torn apart the earlier group of friends was now unleashed upon them, a relentless specter seeking to claim their souls. As they reached the heart of the mystery, they discovered the remains of a campfire from long ago, its embers still smoldering. It was there that they confronted the malevolent force, a swirling, shadowy presence that loomed over them. In a final, harrowing confrontation, the friends confessed their guilt and sorrow, their voices trembling with remorse. The malevolent force, unable to resist the weight of their sincerity, gradually dissipated, its dark energy dispersing like mist on the morning breeze. The lake's waters grew still once more, the apparitions faded into nothingness, and the campsite returned to its abandoned, forsaken state. But the four friends had paid a heavy price, their souls forever marked by the horrors they had witnessed. As they left the haunted camping site behind, they knew that they had escaped the clutches of the malevolent force, but the memories of that night would haunt them for the rest of their lives. They had confronted their guilt and unraveled the dark mysteries of the lake, but they had also come face to face with the unforgiving darkness that lurked in the human heart. The cursed lake would remain a place of eerie legend, a testament to the sins of the past, and a warning to all who ventured too close. The sins of those who had disappeared had come back to haunt the present, and the four friends had learned the importance of confronting one's guilt before it consumed them. In the heart of a misty, cursed forest, where ancient trees stood shrouded in perpetual gloom, there existed a hauntingly beautiful camping site, its allure masking the hidden dangers that lurked within. This was no ordinary forest. It was said to be a realm where the living and the dead converged, where the ethereal melodies of a spectral violinist carried secrets that could ensnare the unwary. Emily, a talented musician in her late 20s, had long been seeking inspiration for her compositions. She had heard whispers of the forest's haunting beauty and ventured into its depths in search of creative solace. Armed with her violin and a heart hungry for inspiration, she entered the misty woods, unaware of the enigmatic fate that awaited her. As Emily ventured deeper into the forest, the world around her seemed to shift and warp. The mist hung heavy in the air, casting an eerie pallor over the surroundings. The trees bore twisted, contorted shapes, as if they were reaching out to touch her, to draw her into their haunting embrace. One night, as Emily set up her camp in a small clearing, a melody began to drift through the mist. The haunting notes of a violin sliced through the silence, the sound simultaneously beautiful and melancholic. It was a melody that spoke of longing and sorrow, of a soul yearning for release. Unable to resist the allure of the music, Emily followed its haunting strains through the forest. The melody seemed to beckon her deeper into the woods, and she moved as if in a trance, her violin held close to her heart. The mist swirled around her, whispering secrets she could not decipher. In a moonlit glen, Emily found herself face to face with the source of the haunting music. A spectral figure stood before her, a violin cradled in its translucent hands. The figure's eyes, pools of darkness, met hers with a mixture of sadness and longing. It was Victor, the spectral violinist. "Who are you?" Emily asked, her voice quivering. Victor's response came not in words but in the ethereal strains of his violin. The music told a story of love and betrayal, of a life cut short in its prime, and of a forest cursed by a tragic history. Emily listened, her heart aching for the soul trapped within the spectral form. As the music reached its crescendo, Emily realized that she held the key to Victor's release. She had to unravel the melody's secrets, to decipher its hidden message. With trembling fingers, she began to play along with Victor, her own violin joining his haunting tune. The forest seemed to respond to their music. The trees swayed in time with the melody, and the mist danced around them like a spectral audience. Emily and Victor played as if their souls were intertwined, each note a desperate plea for freedom. Hours passed, and Emily's fingers ached, but she pressed on. She had to free Victor from his spectral prison. And then, in a moment of revelation, the melody changed, revealing a haunting truth. The forest's curse was born of betrayal, of a love betrayed and a promise broken. With tears in her eyes, Emily played the final, heart-wrenching notes. The forest trembled, and Victor's form began to dissipate, his spectral visage fading into the mist. But before he vanished completely, he mouthed a silent thank you to Emily, his eyes filled with gratitude. As Victor's presence faded, the forest seemed to sigh in relief, the curse lifted, and the mist began to recede. Emily stood alone in the moonlight, her violin still cradled in her hands, her heart heavy with the weight of the forest's history. The following morning, Emily left the cursed forest behind, forever changed by her encounter with Victor and the haunting melody that had bound him for so long. She knew that the allure of beauty could often mask hidden dangers, that the world was a place of both darkness and light. As she emerged from the misty woods, Emily carried with her the knowledge that music had the power to transcend dimensions, to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. She had unlocked the secrets of the forest's haunting melody, and in doing so, she had set free a soul that had been trapped in a timeless symphony of sorrow. The cursed forest would forever remain a place of melancholic beauty, a testament to the allure of the unknown, and a reminder that sometimes the most haunting melodies carried the deepest truth. Emily had ventured into its depths seeking inspiration. But she had found something far more profound, a connection that transcended the boundaries of life and death, and the enduring power of music to communicate across dimensions. In the heart of a secluded forest, hidden away from the world's prying eyes, lay a camping site with an ominous secret. This was no ordinary campsite. It rested upon the hallowed and cursed grounds of a Native American burial site. The sacredness of this place had been violated, and its restless spirit sought revenge. Jake, a skeptical archaeologist in his early 30s, had long been intrigued by the mysteries of the past, driven by his desire to uncover forgotten histories. He led an archaeological expedition into the heart of the forest, hoping to unearth artifacts that would reveal the secrets of this ancient land. The camping site was chosen as their base of operations, and Jake, along with his team of researchers, set up their equipment amidst the towering trees. The air was thick with tension, and a sense of foreboding settled over the campsite like a shroud. As the sun dipped below the horizon, strange occurrences began to unfold. Tribal symbols, long thought lost to time, began to materialize around the camp. They appeared on rocks, in the dirt, and even etched themselves onto the trees. Jake dismissed these signs as mere coincidence, attributing them to the work of pranksters or overactive imaginations. But soon, the forest itself seemed to come alive. Strange whispers drifted through the night air, and ghostly figures flitted through the shadows. Jake's skepticism wavered as he caught fleeting glimpses of apparitions, their eyes filled with anger and sorrow. One fateful night, as the campfire crackled and the team gathered around, a powerful presence made itself known. It was the vengeful spirit of a tribal shaman, his form both ethereal and imposing. The air grew cold, and the forest fell silent, as if the very earth dared not defy the shaman's wrath. Who dares trespass upon this sacred land? The shaman's voice boomed, echoing through the campsite. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he stammered, I am an archaeologist. We mean no harm. We seek only to uncover the secrets of the past. The shaman's eyes blazed with fury as he recounted the violation of the burial grounds. He spoke of the desecration of his people's resting place, of artifacts stolen and ancient rituals disrupted. He had been unjustly killed, and his spirit bound to the land until justice was served. Jake, though still skeptical of the supernatural, recognized the gravity of the situation. He knew that the only way to quell the shaman's anger was to uncover the truth of what had transpired all those years ago. The next day, the expedition delved deep into the forest, following the shaman's guidance. Tribal symbols led the way, illuminating their path through the tangled undergrowth. As they journeyed deeper into the woods, they came upon a hidden cave, the final resting place of the shaman. Inside the cave, they discovered the shaman's remains, his body preserved by the natural elements. Beside him lay the stolen artifacts, relics that had been taken from the sacred burial site. It was clear that the shaman had been murdered while trying to protect the sacred grounds. Jake and his team carefully collected the artifacts, vowing to return them to their rightful place. As they did, the atmosphere in the cave shifted, and the shaman's vengeful presence began to fade. His eyes, once filled with anger, now bore a sense of resolution. The journey back to the campsite was filled with trepidation, for they knew that the shaman's spirit would not rest until justice had been served. Upon their return, they conducted a ceremony, returning the stolen artifacts to their rightful place within the burial grounds. As the last artifact was placed, the earth seemed to sigh in relief, and the shaman's presence finally dissipated. The forest, once shrouded in tension and anger, now radiated a sense of peace. The tribal symbols that had led them to the shaman's resting place faded away, their purpose fulfilled. Jake had put the vengeful spirit to rest, and in doing so, he had learned a valuable lesson about the consequences of disrespecting sacred spaces and the importance of cultural understanding. As Jake and his team left the forest, they did so with a newfound reverence for the past and a deep respect for the beliefs and traditions of the indigenous people who had once called this land home. The cursed burial site would forever remain a testament to the clash between the living and the dead, a reminder that some places were meant to be left undisturbed, and that justice, even in the afterlife, would always find a way to be served. In the depths of a sinister forest, where gnarled trees loomed like ancient sentinels and the night air was thick with ominous whispers, there lay a haunted camping site shrouded in darkness. This was a place of dread and foreboding, where the past clung to the present and secrets festered like unseen wounds. A group of college friends, each burdened by their own hidden fears and unspoken guilt, had gathered for a camping trip to reconnect and find solace in nature's embrace. They arrived at the cursed campsite with the promise of adventure, unaware of the malevolent forces that awaited them. As they set up their camp, the atmosphere grew tense. The forest seemed to close in around them, and the shadows deepened, casting long, eerie fingers across the ground. It was around the campfire that the first strange occurrence unfolded. As the friends huddled around the flickering flames, their faces illuminated by the dancing firelight, they began to share campfire stories. Stories of ghosts, monsters, and unsolved mysteries filled the air, and the darkness seemed to drink in their words, absorbing the tales of fear and uncertainty. But then, something unsettling happened. The stories they told began to come to life. The ghostly figures they had described took form in the shadows, and eerie sounds echoed through the trees. Panic set in as the friends realized that the campfire had awakened a malevolent force that fed on their fears. Whispers in the night taunted them, voices from the darkness revealing their innermost secrets and regrets. Each friend's guilt was exposed, laid bare for all to see. The weight of their past sins bore down upon them, and paranoia consumed their thoughts. It was Mark who cracked first, his face contorted with terror as he confessed to a terrible act of betrayal. His words were like a knife through the heart, and the campfire responded with a surge of malevolent energy. The flames leaped higher, casting grotesque shadows that danced across Mark's face. As the night wore on, the friends' darkest secrets spilled out one by one, a twisted confession of sins both real and imagined. Sarah, haunted by her past, admitted to a cruel betrayal of trust. Mike confessed to a lie that had torn a family apart. Emma revealed a hidden addiction that had consumed her life. With each confession, the campfire's flames burned hotter and brighter, their intensity matching the depth of the friends' guilt. The sinister force that surrounded them seemed to feed on their pain and suffering. But it was Lisa, with her eyes filled with tears and her voice trembling, who bore the heaviest secret of all. She confessed to a crime that had taken a life, a dark act she had hidden from the world. Her words hung heavy in the air, and the forest itself seemed to recoil from the weight of her guilt. As Lisa's confession echoed through the night, the campfire reached its climax, the flames roaring with an intensity that threatened to consume them all. The friends, racked with guilt and terror, realized that the only way to escape the malevolent force's grip was to confront their past and atone for their sins. With trembling hands, they gathered around the campfire and vowed to seek forgiveness for their actions. They would do everything in their power to right the wrongs they had committed, to make amends for the pain they had caused. As the first light of dawn broke through the forest canopy, the malevolent force began to recede, its grip loosening. The campfire's flames dwindled to a gentle, comforting glow, and the shadows retreated. The friends had faced their darkest fears and secrets, and in doing so, they had defied the curse that had haunted the camping site. As they left the sinister forest behind, forever changed by their ordeal, they knew that the power of guilt and secrets could shape one's reality, but it could also be confronted and overcome. The cursed campfire would forever remain a haunting memory, a reminder of the inescapable nature of one's past and the importance of seeking redemption for one's actions. The friends had emerged from the darkness with a newfound understanding of the weight of their choices and a determination to live their lives with honesty and integrity. In the heart of a desolate and fog-shrouded moor, where the mist clung to the ground like ethereal tendrils, there lay an eerie haunted camping site, its unsettling presence hidden in the shifting haze. This was a place where the boundary between the living and the dead grew thin, and where the moor seemed to conspire against all who dared to enter. Mark, Sarah, and their young daughter, Lily, had embarked on a family adventure in search of the unknown. The vast moorland, with its desolation and mystique, had called to them. Armed with camping gear and a sense of curiosity, they ventured deep into the fog-shrouded moor. As the sun descended below the horizon, the mists began to encircle them, thick and impenetrable. Panic set in as they realized they had lost their way, the familiar landmarks swallowed by the supernatural fog. They were trapped in a disorienting labyrinth, unable to find their path. It was then that they heard the whispers, faint voices in the distance, barely audible through the thick haze. As the whispers drew closer, they took on spectral form, revealing themselves as ghostly guides, figures clad in tattered clothing. Their faces obscured by the fog offered assistance to the lost family. Desperate and disoriented, Mark and Sarah had no choice but to follow the phantom guides. The eerie figures seemed to glide through the moor, their footsteps making no sound. They led the family deeper into the fog, their pale, outstretched hands beckoning them forward. As they journeyed further into the moor, spectral lights began to appear in the distance. Will-o'-the-wisps, they were called, dancing orbs of pale blue and green that lured travelers to their doom. Mark and Sarah were entranced by the lights, their movements hypnotic and alluring. It was Lily, their young daughter, who broke their trance. She tugged at her parents' hands, her wide eyes filled with fear. "Something's not right," she whispered. Mark and Sarah snapped out of their daze and looked around. The phantom guides had disappeared into the fog, leaving them surrounded by the ghostly lights. Panic set in as they realized the danger they were in. They called out for the guides, but their voices were swallowed by the fog. The will-o'-the-wisps drew closer, their lights casting an eerie glow on the moor. The family's footsteps quickened, but no matter how fast they moved, the lights seemed to stay just out of reach. As the lights closed in, Lily cried out, and Mark and Sarah could feel a malevolent presence closing in around them. They had been led astray, lured deeper into the moor's supernatural grip. Just when all hope seemed lost, a haunting voice echoed through the fog, a mournful, spectral cry that sent shivers down their spines. The voice seemed to guide them away from the will-o'-the-wisps, leading them through the dense fog. As they followed the voice, they stumbled upon a long-forgotten burial mound, a place of ancient and hidden power. It was there that the spectral guides reappeared, their forms shimmering in the mist. The guides revealed the Moor's dark history, a tale of betrayal and tragedy, of a love that had been torn apart by jealousy and greed. The voices in the fog were the echoes of those who had been led astray by the will-o'-the-wisps, lost to the Moor's malevolence. The guides urged Mark and Sarah to seek forgiveness for their trespass and to leave the Moor behind. With heavy hearts, they heeded the spirit's advice and retreated from the cursed place, their steps guided by the mournful cry of the ghostly voice. As they emerged from the fog-shrouded moor, forever changed by their ordeal, they knew that the vulnerability of families in unfamiliar territory could lead to unforeseen dangers. The haunted camping site would forever remain a place of mystery and malevolence, a testament to the blurred line between help and malevolence in the supernatural world. Mark, Sarah, and Lily had ventured into the unknown, and they had emerged with a newfound respect for the power of ancient spirits and the perils of the Moor's haunting depths. In the desolate outskirts of a forgotten, decrepit mining town, where the buildings loomed like skeletal remnants of a bygone era and the air was thick with the stench of decay, there lay a chilling and haunted camping site. This was a place of darkness and despair, where the town's grim history and the greed of those who had once lived there still clung to the land. A group of urban explorers had gathered in search of a hidden treasure rumored to be buried beneath the town's ruins. Armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure, they ventured into the decaying heart of the mining town, unaware of the malevolent forces that lurked in the shadows. As they made their way through the crumbling streets, a haunting wind began to howl through the town's ruins. It was a mournful, otherworldly sound, as if the very spirits of the miners who had once toiled here were crying out in anguish. The explorers pressed on, undeterred by the eerie winds, their footsteps echoing through the empty streets. They entered the remains of an old mine, where shafts descended deep into the earth. It was there that they hoped to find the hidden treasure, a fortune said to have been lost to time. But as they delved deeper into the mine, strange occurrences began to unfold. Ghostly apparitions of miners, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair, appeared before them. They worked tirelessly, their spectral hands swinging pickaxes and shovels, as if trapped in an eternal cycle of labor. Panic set in as the explorers realized that they had unwittingly awakened vengeful spirits. The miners' eyes bore into them with accusatory glares, as if blaming them for the horrors of the past. The air grew suffocating, and the darkness closed in around them. Desperate to escape the haunting shadows, the explorers retraced their steps, but the town seemed to shift and change, the very streets rearranging themselves to confound their path. It was as if the town itself conspired to trap them in its decaying past. As they wandered deeper into the town's treacherous depths, they uncovered the grim history of greed and exploitation that had led to the miners' suffering. The town's wealthy industrialists had ruthlessly exploited the miners, subjecting them to unbearable working conditions and paying them a pittance while amassing vast fortunes. The miners had toiled in darkness, their lives sacrificed for the sake of profit. It was a legacy of unchecked greed that had left the town in ruins. And the vengeful spirits of the miners were now exacting their revenge on any who dared to disturb their rest. With each step, the explorers were haunted by the echoes of the past. The agonized cries of the miners, the clanging of pickaxes, and the oppressive weight of the town's history. The malevolent forces closed in, their spectral hands reaching out to drag the intruders into the depths of the mine, where they would be condemned to labor for all eternity. But as the explorers neared the point of no return, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber deep within the mine. Inside, they found a cache of treasure, glittering with the spoils of the town's industrialist past. It was the very fortune they had sought, but it was tainted by the suffering of the miners. Realization struck them like a blow. The treasure was not theirs to take. It was a cursed legacy of greed and cruelty. In a desperate bid for redemption, they gathered the treasure and made their way to the heart of the mine. There, they placed the treasure upon a makeshift altar, and the vengeful spirits of the miners closed in, their eyes burning with fury. But instead of attacking, the spirits seemed to pause, as if waiting for something. In a solemn voice, one of the explorers spoke of the town's dark history and the suffering of the miners. They begged forgiveness for their intrusion and offered the treasure as a symbol of their remorse. The howling wind that had filled the mine's tunnels grew still, and the spirits of the miners seemed to nod in acceptance. The curse that had bound them to the town's ruins began to lift, and the oppressive darkness receded. As the explorers made their way out of the mine, forever changed by their ordeal, they knew that the consequences of unchecked greed could haunt a place for generations. The haunted camping site on the outskirts of the decrepit mining town would forever remain a testament to the haunting legacy of industrialization, a reminder that the pursuit of wealth at any cost could lead to a lifetime of suffering and despair. The explorers had escaped the howling shadows, but the chilling echoes of the past would forever linger in their memories. In the heart of an impenetrable, ancient forest, where the trees stood tall and imposing, their branches shrouded in perpetual twilight, there lay a cursed and haunted camping site. This was a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was blurred, and where the innocence of youth could be corrupted by the fear of the unknown. A group of Boy Scouts, led by their determined scoutmaster, Mr. Johnson, had set out on an adventure deep into the forest. Armed with camping gear and a spirit of camaraderie, they ventured into the ancient woods, unaware of the malevolent forces that awaited them. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the world around them seemed to shift and change. The dense canopy of trees blocked out the sunlight, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of their footsteps on the leaf-strewn ground. It was then that they heard the whispers, soft, haunting voices that seemed to emanate from the very trees themselves. The voices spoke of lost scout troops, of eerie campfire stories, and of vanished children. The scouts exchanged nervous glances, but Mr. Johnson reassured them that it was all just their imaginations playing tricks on them. But as they continued on their path, strange occurrences began to unfold. Footprints appeared in the dirt, leading them further into the forest. These were not the footprints of their own troop, but those of another, long-forgotten group of scouts. They followed the mysterious trail, their unease growing with each step. As night fell and the forest grew darker, they stumbled upon a ghostly campsite hidden deep within the woods. Tattered tents stood like spectral sentinels, and a long-extinguished campfire smoldered with eerie, blue flames. It was as if time itself had frozen in this desolate place. As they explored the campsite, they discovered patches and badges from a Boy Scout troop that had vanished decades ago. The badges bore the insignia of a troop led by a scoutmaster named Mr. Barker. The scouts had been lost without a trace, their fate a chilling mystery that had haunted the forest ever since. Whispers in the night seemed to draw closer, and ghostly apparitions of scouts began to appear around them. These were not the living scouts of Mr. Johnson's troop, but the spirits of those who had disappeared. They looked at the scouts with hollow eyes, their faces etched with sadness. One by one, the apparitions revealed their stories. They had ventured into the forest with their scoutmaster, Mr. Barker, seeking adventure and camaraderie. But the forest had other plans, and one by one, the scouts had vanished, consumed by the darkness. Mr. Johnson listened in horror as the ghosts recounted their final moments, the feeling of being watched, the sinister whispers in the night, and the overwhelming sense of fear that had gripped them. It was a tale of innocence lost in the face of the unknown. The forest had claimed them, and now, it seemed, it hungered for more. The apparitions implored Mr. Johnson and his scouts to leave the forest, to escape its grasp before it was too late. But escape was not so simple. The forest seemed to conspire against them, its trees shifting and rearranging themselves, blocking their path. The whispers grew louder, and the shadows closed in around them. Desperate to break free from the forest's grip, Mr. Johnson and his scouts retraced their steps, following the eerie footprints back to the campfire. There, they made a chilling discovery, an old journal, its pages filled with the frantic writings of Mr. Barker, the lost scoutmaster. In the journal, Mr. Barker had chronicled the growing sense of dread that had haunted him and his scouts. He wrote of strange occurrences in the forest, of phantom voices, and of an overwhelming feeling of being watched. He had tried to protect his scouts, but the forest had proven relentless. As the scouts read the journal, a haunting realization dawned upon them. The forest itself was alive with a malevolent presence, a force that fed on the fear and innocence of those who ventured into its depths. It had claimed Mr. Barker and his troop, and now it sought to claim them as well. In a desperate bid for survival, Mr. Johnson and his scouts recited a solemn promise, vowing to leave the forest and never return. The ghosts of the lost scout troop seemed to nod in approval, their hollow eyes filled with gratitude. As the scouts emerged from the haunted camping site, forever changed by their ordeal, they knew that the forest had tested their innocence and fear, but they had emerged with a newfound sense of resilience and determination. The cursed forest would forever remain a place of mystery and malevolence, a reminder that the loss of innocence in the face of the unknown could shape the course of one's life. Mr. Johnson and his scouts had ventured into the depths of the forest and had escaped with their lives, but the haunting legacy of the lost scout troop would forever linger in their memories. In a desolate valley, where the land stretched as far as the eye could see, its rugged beauty marred by the ominous presence of towering, spectral guardians, there lay a terrifying haunted camping site. This was a place where the boundaries of the mortal world and the supernatural realm blurred, and where the ancient guardians stood watch over secrets that were not meant to be revealed. Anna and David, paranormal investigators with a thirst for uncovering the unknown, had heard the whispers of the valley's malevolent guardians. Armed with cameras, recording equipment, and a sense of determination, they ventured into the desolate valley, unaware of the ancient forces that would soon confront them. As they set up their equipment at the heart of the haunted camping site, the air grew heavy with an unsettling energy. The towering guardians, massive stone figures adorned with cryptic symbols, loomed over them like silent sentinels. Their eyes, carved from ancient stone, seemed to follow Anna and David's every move. The investigators began their exploration, their cameras rolling and their senses on high alert. Eerie whispers echoed through the valley, disembodied voices that spoke in a language unknown to them. Anna and David exchanged uneasy glances but pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets of the malevolent guardians. As the night descended upon the valley, the guardians' towering forms seemed to come alive. They shifted and moved, their stone bodies reshaping themselves into new, grotesque forms. Anna and David watched in horror as the guardians closed in around them, their spectral forms casting eerie, shifting shadows. Confrontations with the guardians became more frequent and intense. They hurled bolts of energy at Anna and David, their power shaking the very ground beneath their feet. The investigators fought to maintain their composure, their cameras capturing the relentless attacks of the ancient protectors. Desperate for answers, Anna delved into research about the valley and its guardians. She uncovered a chilling legend, one that spoke of a group of ancient guardians tasked with protecting an ancient secret buried within the valley. Those who dared to seek that secret were met with the guardians' relentless wrath. Anna and David realized that their presence in the valley had angered the malevolent guardians. They had trespassed upon a sacred place and disrupted the guardians' watchful vigil. The ancient protectors were determined to drive them away, no matter the cost. In a daring bid to unlock the secrets of the valley, Anna and David conducted a ritual at the heart of the haunted camping site, attempting to communicate with the guardians. They spoke the ancient language of the valley, invoking the spirits of the guardians and asking for their guidance. The valley responded with a sudden, overwhelming surge of power. The guardians' spectral forms descended upon them, their massive figures casting dark shadows over Anna and David. The investigators were enveloped in a storm of energy, their senses overwhelmed by the ancient power of the guardians. As the ritual reached its climax, a chilling revelation unfolded. The malevolent guardians were not the malevolent force they had appeared to be. They were protectors of an ancient secret that had the power to unleash unimaginable darkness upon the world. Realization struck Anna and David as they understood the true nature of the guardians. The ancient protectors were not malevolent. They were guardians of a power that had the potential to bring about untold destruction. The malevolent forces that had plagued them were not the guardians themselves, but the darkness that lurked within the valley, seeking to corrupt anyone who dared to approach the ancient secret. With newfound clarity, Anna and David concluded the ritual, appeasing the guardians and promising to leave the valley in peace. The storm of energy subsided, and the towering figures of the guardians returned to their silent vigil. As the investigators made their way out of the haunted camping site, forever changed by their ordeal, they knew that meddling with ancient forces could have dire consequences. The malevolent guardians of the desolate valley would forever remain protectors of an ancient secret, a testament to the preservation of knowledge that could bring both enlightenment and destruction. Anna and David had ventured into the depths of the valley and had emerged with a profound understanding of the ancient guardians' role in safeguarding the secrets of the past. Beside the mysterious and stagnant lake, hidden in the depths of a haunted camping site, Sarah had sought solitude and inspiration. She was a writer in search of her next great story, but what she found would plunge her into a world of darkness and torment. Sarah's tent was nestled beneath the gnarled branches of ancient trees, their leaves rustling with an unsettling whisper. It was a place that seemed untouched by time, as if the very land held its breath in anticipation of the horrors that lay within. One gloomy afternoon, as Sarah rummaged through her belongings, she discovered an old, tattered diary hidden at the bottom of her backpack. The diary was unlike any she had seen before, its pages filled with cramped, disturbing handwriting that seemed to crawl across the paper like a spider. Intrigued and unnerved, Sarah began to read. The diary belonged to a man named Samuel, and its pages told a tale of obsession and despair. Samuel had been consumed by an insatiable desire to uncover the secrets of the haunted camping site and the mysterious lake that lay beside it. As Sarah read on, she felt a chill creep down her spine. Samuel's diary entries grew increasingly disturbed, filled with ramblings about malevolent spirits and the tormented souls of the camping site. He spoke of whispers in the night and ghostly apparitions that haunted his every step. The more Sarah read, the deeper she was drawn into Samuel's world. It was as if the diary had a life of its own, its words seeping into her very being. She could feel the presence of Samuel's tormented spirit, a malevolent force that seemed to hover over her like a shadow. As night fell over the haunted camping site, Sarah's tent became a haven for the restless spirit. She could hear faint whispers in the darkness, the same whispers that Samuel had described in his diary. Ghostly apparitions began to manifest, their pale forms moving through the shadows. Terrified and unable to escape the haunting presence, Sarah knew that she had to uncover the truth about Samuel's fate. She continued to read the diary, following the twisted path of his obsession deeper into the darkness. In the diary, Samuel had written of a hidden cave beneath the lake, a place where he believed the source of the haunting lay. He had become consumed by the need to uncover its secrets, convinced that it held the key to the spirits that tormented him. Driven by a desperate determination, Sarah ventured to the edge of the lake, where the stagnant waters seemed to hold the secrets of centuries. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of dread, she waded into the murky depths, guided by the directions in Samuel's diary. The cave was as dark and foreboding as she had imagined, its entrance shrouded in shadows. As Sarah entered, the air grew heavy with the weight of the past, and the walls seemed to close in around her. She could hear faint whispers echoing through the cave, the same whispers that had haunted Samuel. Deeper into the cave she went, her heart pounding with each step. The walls were covered in cryptic symbols, and the floor was littered with bones. It was a place of death and darkness, and Sarah could feel the malevolent spirit drawing closer. In the heart of the cave, Sarah made a shocking discovery, an ancient, ornate chest hidden beneath a pile of bones. It was covered in strange markings, and when she opened it, she found a collection of diaries identical to Samuel's, each one filled with the tormented writings of those who had come before him. As she read through the diaries, a chilling revelation unfolded. The cursed diary had been passed down through generations, each writer becoming consumed by the obsession that had plagued Samuel. The malevolent spirit, bound to the diary, had lured them to their doom. Sarah realized that she was trapped in a never-ending cycle of torment, just like those who had come before her. The diary had ensnared her, and the malevolent spirit was drawing closer, ready to claim her soul. Desperate to break the curse, Sarah wrote her own entry in the diary, begging for release from the torment that had consumed her. She pleaded with the malevolent spirit to spare her and to break free from the endless cycle of suffering. As she finished writing, a sense of dread washed over her, and she felt the presence of the malevolent spirit drawing closer. It was as if the very air around her had thickened with darkness. But then, in a moment of haunting silence, the spirit seemed to hesitate. Sarah watched in awe as the diary's pages began to turn on their own, the words of the malevolent spirit vanishing into thin air. The curse was broken, and the spirit was free. As Sarah emerged from the cave, forever changed by her ordeal, she knew that the power of written words could bridge the gap between the living and the dead. The haunted camping site beside the mysterious lake would forever remain a place of darkness and torment, a testament to the consequences of obsession with the past. Sarah had ventured into the depths of the cursed diary and had emerged with a profound understanding of the malevolent guardians that lurked within its pages. The haunting howl. The forest was not a place for the faint of heart, especially not at night. The moon hung in the sky like a pale lantern, casting eerie shadows that danced among the towering trees. Sarah, a fearless outdoorswoman with a troubled past, found herself deep within this remote and unsettling forest. She had come here to confront her fears, But what awaited her in the darkness was beyond anything she could have imagined. Sarah was no stranger to the wilderness. Her life had been a constant struggle, filled with trials and tribulations. Camping alone in this forsaken forest was her way of proving to herself that she could conquer anything, even the darkest corners of her mind. Armed with a lantern, she ventured further into the heart of the forest, determined to find the strength she had lost. As Sarah moved through the underbrush, she stumbled upon an old, weathered diary. Its pages were brittle, and the ink had faded with time. Curiosity getting the better of her, she opened it to a random page and began to read. May 17, 1893, the diary's entry began. The haunting howl in these woods continues to torment my dreams. It is the sound of anguish, a cry for release from an eternity of suffering. I fear the spirit that dwells here. Sarah's heart raced as she read the cryptic words. It seemed that she was not the first to be haunted by the forest's eerie howl. She decided to push deeper into the woods, determined to uncover the source of the unsettling sound. The further she walked, the more the howling intensified. It was a chilling, mournful wail that seemed to seep into her very bones. Sarah could feel it in the pit of her stomach, a sense of dread that clung to her like a second skin. Then, as if conjured by the haunting melody, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was ghostly, ethereal, and seemed to be made of moonlight itself. The figure moved with an otherworldly grace, its eyes fixated on Sarah. She froze, unable to tear her gaze away. "Who are you?" Sarah finally managed to stammer, her voice trembling. The ghostly figure did not reply. Instead, it continued to approach, its presence sending shivers down her spine. Sarah's lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced around the spectral form. As the figure drew nearer, Sarah could see a deep sadness in its eyes. It was a sadness that mirrored her own, a reflection of the pain and suffering that had haunted her for so long. "What do you want?" she demanded, her fear giving way to a fierce determination. The ghostly figure raised its hand and pointed into the distance, where the haunting howl seemed to echo from the very heart of the forest. Sarah understood. The figure wanted her to follow, to uncover the truth behind the haunting howl that echoed through the woods. With a resolute nod, she took a step forward, her lantern casting a dim, wavering light as she followed the ghostly presence deeper into the forest. The journey was treacherous, filled with thick underbrush and gnarled roots that threatened to trip her at every turn. The howling grew louder, filling the air with an unbearable sense of sorrow. It was as if the forest itself wept for the past. Finally, they reached a clearing, and in the center of it stood an ancient, gnarled tree. Its branches stretched out like skeletal arms, and in its hollow trunk, Sarah saw a faint, bluish light. It pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and the haunting howl seemed to emanate from it. The ghostly figure extended its hand toward the tree, its form flickering like a dying flame. Sarah could feel the presence's desperation, its need for release from the torment that bound it to this place. Without hesitation, she approached the tree and placed her hand on its bark. The moment her skin made contact, a rush of memories flooded her mind. She saw the figure in life, a tormented soul trapped in a tragic love story that had ended in betrayal and heartbreak. Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she realized the truth. The haunting howl was the cry of a soul in pain, a spirit bound to the tree by a love that had gone horribly wrong. It was a cry for release, for forgiveness. With a trembling voice, Sarah spoke the words that the spirit had been longing to hear for over a century. "I forgive you," she whispered. The tree shuddered, and the bluish light pulsed brightly. The ghostly figure let out a final, mournful wail before dissipating into the night, finally finding the peace it had sought for so long. As the haunting howl faded away, the forest grew silent. The moon cast a soft, comforting light over the clearing, and Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The forest, once a place of fear, had become a place of healing. Sarah knew that her journey was far from over, but now she had the strength to face her own demons. The haunting howl had shown her that even in the darkest of places, there could be redemption and forgiveness. She left the forest that night with a renewed sense of purpose and a heart no longer burdened by the past. The campfire shadows the ancient forest stood as a sentinel of time, its dense, towering trees whispering secrets of centuries gone by. At the heart of this primordial wilderness lay an isolated campsite, a place where the boundaries between the known and the unknown blurred. Alex, an experienced camper with a love for adventure, had chosen this remote location for his latest excursion. He yearned to test his survival skills, to prove to himself that he could conquer the wild. With a backpack filled with essentials, he ventured deep into the forest, far from the conveniences of civilization. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Alex reached the heart of the forest where his campsite awaited. Setting up his tent and gathering firewood, he was filled with a sense of exhilaration. The isolation brought a thrill unlike any other, a feeling of being one with nature and its raw, unyielding power. With the campfire crackling to life, Alex sat on a log, the flames casting an intimate glow that pushed back the encroaching darkness. He felt a twinge of unease, knowing that he was truly alone, miles from the nearest human contact. But this was precisely what he had sought. As the night deepened, a peculiar sensation washed over him. It was as if the forest itself held its breath, waiting, watching. Alex tried to dismiss it as his imagination, attributing the sensation to the isolation he had embraced. However, as the hours passed, the forest's whispers grew louder. Faint, whispering voices seemed to emanate from the depths of the woods, as if carried on the wind. They were unintelligible, eerie, and seemed to hold secrets long forgotten by man. Alex strained to hear more clearly, his heart quickening with a sense of foreboding. The shadows among the trees began to shift, their movements too deliberate to be mere tricks of the firelight. They gathered on the fringes of his vision, indistinct and formless, yet undeniably present. The campfire's flames flickered and danced, casting grotesque silhouettes upon the trees. Alex's paranoia grew, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows had a malevolent intent. "What do you want?" he called out into the dark, his voice quivering. The whispering voices grew more insistent, their tones taking on an unsettling, chant-like quality. Alex's hands trembled as he clutched a stick, ready to defend himself if necessary. The shadows seemed to respond to his fear, closing in on the campsite. They twisted and swirled, their movement almost hypnotic. He could no longer deny that they were not mere figments of his imagination. They were something else, something otherworldly. With the firelight waning, Alex made a fateful decision. He would confront these shadowy intruders. Gathering his courage, he stepped away from the campfire and moved toward the darkness, where the shadows congregated. The forest seemed to come alive with an ominous energy. As Alex advanced, the shadows retreated, but he could hear their whispering voices growing louder, more urgent. It was as if they were trying to lead him deeper into the forest, into their domain. For what felt like an eternity, Alex pursued the enigmatic shadows, feeling as if he had crossed into another dimension. Time and space warped, and he became disoriented, lost in a world of darkness and whispering voices. Finally, he stumbled upon a clearing deep within the forest, and in its center stood an ancient, gnarled tree. Its bark was etched with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift in the moonlight. The shadows converged on the tree, and Alex realized that he had been led here for a reason. His heart pounded as he examined the tree's symbols, a sense of dread washing over him. These markings were no ordinary graffiti. They were a dark, forgotten language, a key to some malevolent power. As he touched the tree's gnarled surface, memories flooded his mind. He saw the forest as it had been centuries ago, a place of ancient rites and offerings to appease a dark entity that dwelled within the tree. The shadows were its servants, and the forest had been tainted by their presence. Alex knew that he had stumbled upon a dark secret, a presence that had waited centuries to be set free. The forest had lured him here, playing on his desire for adventure and isolation. In that moment, the tree's symbols pulsed with an unholy light, and the shadows surged forward, engulfing Alex. Their whispering voices became a cacophony of eerie chants, drowning out his screams. As the shadows consumed him, the forest grew silent once more, as if the ancient trees and the dark entity within the gnarled tree had finally found release. The campfire's embers smoldered, the flames extinguished, leaving nothing behind but a shroud of darkness. The ancient forest had reclaimed its secrets, and Alex had become one with the campfire shadows, forever lost to the wilderness. The isolation and the vulnerability of man in the wilderness had played their part in a sinister game, and the fear of the unknown had claimed another victim. In the heart of the ancient forest, the whispering voices continued their eerie chants, a chilling reminder of the darkness that dwelled within, waiting for the next unsuspecting traveler to venture into its realm. The midnight visitor. The full moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie, silvery glow upon the desolate campground. Emily, a young woman haunted by troubles that seemed to follow her like shadows, had sought solace in the remote wilderness. She hoped that the isolation would provide the escape she so desperately craved. The campground was nestled in a valley, surrounded by dense woods that seemed to breathe with a sinister life of their own. It was the perfect place to disconnect from the world, or so Emily had thought. As night fell and the moon ascended, she found herself alone in the quiet of the wilderness. She had arrived at the campground earlier in the day, setting up her small, weathered tent. The only source of light was the pale moon, and the only sounds were the whispers of the wind and the occasional rustling of leaves. It was a serene and isolated setting, precisely what Emily had desired. As she lay in her tent, listening to the symphony of the night, she tried to put her troubles behind her. The past had been a relentless tormentor, and she had come here seeking respite from the memories that clung to her like a shroud. However, as the clock struck midnight, the tranquil atmosphere of the campground shifted. Emily felt an inexplicable unease, a feeling that she was no longer alone. It was as if the very air had thickened with a malevolent presence. A sudden chill swept through the tent, causing Emily to shiver. She pulled the sleeping bag tight around her, trying to convince herself that it was merely a product of her overactive imagination. Yet, the sensation of being watched persisted. Just as the unease began to fade, a whisper pierced the silence. It was faint, almost inaudible, but the words were clear. "Emily, you cannot escape," the voice murmured, sending a shiver down her spine. She held her breath, her heart pounding in her chest. There was no denying it. Someone, or something, was in her tent with her. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she had to see who or what had invaded her solitude. Summoning her courage, she unzipped the sleeping bag and slowly emerged from the tent. The campground was bathed in the silver light of the full moon, revealing the eerie stillness that enveloped her. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but Emily knew what she had heard. She couldn't ignore the presence any longer. She began to search the perimeter of the campground, her flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon. But no one was there. The woods were silent, their depths hidden in the obsidian shadows. It was as if the voice had never been there, and Emily began to question her own sanity. Resigned, she returned to her tent, determined to put the bizarre encounter behind her. She hoped that sleep would provide the escape she sought. But as the hours ticked away, her exhaustion gave way to a different kind of dread. Just as the clock struck midnight once more, the voice returned, colder and more insistent. "Emily, you cannot escape," it repeated, the words echoing through the tent like a chilling refrain. Emily felt a presence in the room, an unseen entity that lingered just out of reach. The air grew heavy, and the temperature plummeted, the cold seeping into her bones. She knew that the midnight visitor was real, and it was not bound by the laws of the living. Each night, the visitor returned, and with each visitation, Emily's fear intensified. The voice grew more sinister, its words carrying the weight of something ancient and malevolent. It knew her past, and it wanted her to remember. As the nights passed, Emily's body bore the marks of the visitor's torment. Bruises and scratches marred her skin, and she could no longer deny the reality of the situation. She was being visited by a vengeful spirit, one that seemed intent on forcing her to confront the darkness that had haunted her for so long. Desperate for answers, Emily began to research the history of the campground. It didn't take long to uncover the grim truth. The very land she had sought for refuge had a dark history, a history of tragedy and suffering. The campground had once been a place of rituals, of offerings to appease a malevolent entity that dwelled in the surrounding woods. It was a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin, and where the past had a way of bleeding into the present. Emily realized that she had unwittingly stepped into a world where the sins of the past had not been forgotten. The vengeful spirit that haunted her was a victim of those ancient rituals, a tormented soul bound to the land. Determined to break free from the midnight visitor's torment, Emily began to perform her own rituals, ones intended to appease the spirit and put it to rest. Each night, she whispered words of forgiveness and understanding, hoping that the spirit would find peace. Finally, on a moonlit night, the visitor's voice grew softer, the chill in the air dissipated, and the presence that had haunted her for so long faded away. The campground was silent once more, and Emily was left to contemplate the darkness of her past. The campground remained a desolate and eerie place, a reminder of the sins of the past and the consequences of seeking refuge in the wrong places. Emily had escaped the midnight visitor, but the scars, both physical and emotional, would stay with her for a lifetime. In the end, she had come to understand that true escape could only be found within herself, and that the haunting of her own past was a darkness that could not be outrun, no matter how deep into the wilderness she ventured. The Whispering Pines. Mark, an adventurous hiker with a yearning for the unknown, had embarked on a solo camping trip into the heart of a pitch-black forest. The moon, shrouded by thick clouds, provided no guidance as he ventured further into the wilderness. Tall, foreboding pine trees loomed overhead, casting a web of darkness that seemed to swallow the very air. He had chosen this remote location to escape the chaos of the world, to find solace among the ancient giants that stood sentinel over the forest. Mark relished the silence, the solitude, but he was about to discover that the silence held secrets that were far from comforting. As he set up his campsite, the air was heavy with an eerie stillness that seemed to seep into his very bones. The forest was silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves, a sound that seemed to whisper ancient secrets to him. Mark, a man of determination, was undeterred by the oppressive atmosphere. He had always been drawn to the unknown, to places where few dared to tread. As night fell, he sat by the campfire, listening to the crackling flames and the soft murmur of the forest. But then, faint whispers began to emerge from the darkness. They were barely audible, like a soft breeze brushing against his ears, but the words were chilling. Come closer, they beckoned, and Mark could not resist the urge to follow their eerie call. With a flashlight in hand, he ventured into the inky blackness, guided by the whispered voices. The forest seemed to come alive, its towering trees closing in on him as if they were alive, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The further he walked, the more the voices intensified, their words growing more insistent and sinister. They promised secrets, knowledge beyond his wildest dreams, and Mark felt compelled to uncover their mysteries. Finally, he reached a clearing deep within the forest, and in the center stood an ancient, gnarled pine tree. Its branches seemed to twist and writhe, and in its shadowy hollow, Mark saw a pale, bluish light. It pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and the voices seemed to emanate from it. The whispers urged Mark to touch the tree, to delve into the secrets it held. Unable to resist the lure of the unknown, he reached out and placed his hand on the gnarled bark. As soon as his skin made contact, a rush of memories flooded his mind. He saw the forest as it had been centuries ago, a place of ancient rituals and offerings to appease a dark entity that dwelled within the pine trees. The whispers were the voices of those who had fallen prey to the lure of the forest's way of seducing them into its darkness. With mounting horror, Mark realized that he had become ensnared in the same trap. The forest, with its whispered promises, had drawn him in, and he had become one with the eerie voices that had haunted him. As he pulled his hand away from the tree, the bluish light pulsated brighter, and the whispers grew louder and more frenzied. Mark's mind reeled, and he could feel the presence of the forest, a malevolent force that sought to claim his soul. He tried to flee, but the forest's grasp was unyielding. The trees seemed to close in on him, their branches entwining like serpents, their whispers growing into an overwhelming cacophony. Mark's sanity began to crumble, and he felt as though he was losing himself in the darkness. With a final, desperate cry, he begged the forest for release, for forgiveness. He had been ensnared by its seductive whispers, and now he was trapped in a world of eternal darkness. The bluish light dimmed, and the forest released its hold on Mark. He stumbled back from the gnarled tree, his mind filled with the memories of those who had come before him, the souls that had been claimed by the forest's darkness. As he made his way back to his campsite, the forest was silent once more. The whispering voices faded into the night. Mark had escaped the lure of the unknown, but the darkness had left its mark on him, a reminder of the fragility of the human spirit in the face of the unknown. The forest, with its towering pine trees and whispered secrets, would forever remain a place of quiet dread and paranoia, a reminder that sometimes the darkness within us is the most terrifying unknown of all. Mark had succumbed to the lure of the forest, but he had also learned a chilling lesson about the depths of the human psyche and the consequences of seeking answers in the darkest corners of existence. The vengeful spirits. James, a skeptic of all things supernatural, had long dismissed the tales of vengeful spirits that were said to haunt the isolated campsite nestled beside the murky, haunted lake. He prided himself on his rationality and had come to the campsite to prove that the legends were mere folklore, the product of overactive imaginations. The campsite was a place of seclusion, hidden deep within the woods. Tall trees surrounded the lake, their branches casting long, ghostly shadows upon the water. It was the perfect place for James to set up his camp and test his theory. As night fell and the moonlight bathed the lake in an eerie glow, he believed that he was in for a quiet, uneventful night. With a campfire crackling, James sat by the lake shore, the ripples of the water lapping gently at the shore. He gazed out at the lake, determined to debunk the claims of malevolent spirits that were said to haunt it. He had his camera ready, determined to capture any unexplained phenomena. The night was still and silent, and James felt a sense of unease creeping over him. He tried to dismiss it as a product of his own skepticism, but as the hours passed, his unease grew. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that unseen eyes were fixed upon him. Just as he began to contemplate turning in for the night, a soft, mournful wail echoed across the lake. It was a sound that sent a shiver down his spine, a sound that seemed to carry a deep sense of longing and despair. He turned his camera toward the lake, determined to capture the source of the chilling sound. It was then that he saw them, ghostly figures, their forms ethereal and translucent, gliding silently across the water's surface. The apparitions were pale and haunting, their eyes fixed on James. His heart pounded as he watched the spectral figures draw nearer. He could see the sadness in their eyes, a sadness that seemed to mirror his own growing unease. He knew that he couldn't explain what he was witnessing with his rational mind, and for the first time, he questioned his skepticism. The ghostly figures approached the shore, their movements graceful and otherworldly. They seemed to reach out to him, their hands passing through the air as if in search of something. James was paralyzed with fear, unable to look away from their haunting presence. As the apparitions faded back into the lake, James was left in a state of shock. The rational explanations he had relied upon no longer seemed to hold weight in the face of such inexplicable phenomena. He was left with a growing sense of dread, a sense that the lake held secrets that defied all reason. For the following nights, the ghostly figures returned, their presence becoming a nightly ritual. Each time, they drew nearer, their spectral forms becoming more distinct. James began to capture their images on his camera, but the more he learned about them, the more he realized the depth of their torment. The apparitions were the spirits of those who had met tragic ends in the lake, their lives cut short by accidents and misfortunes. They were bound to the lake, unable to move on to the afterlife, their unfinished business keeping them tethered to the mortal realm. As James delved deeper into the history of the campsite, he discovered a chilling revelation. The lake had a dark past, a history of secrets and tragedies that had been buried beneath the surface. It was a place where the living had ignored the warnings of the past, a place where the spirits sought to exact their vengeance. James realized that he had become an unwitting intruder in the spirit's realm, and his skepticism had only fueled their determination to make their presence known. He began to feel their anguish, their sadness, and their anger. The spirits wanted him to acknowledge their existence, to bear witness to their pain. Determined to understand their plight, James conducted a series of rituals, hoping to appease the vengeful spirits and help them find peace. Each night, he whispered words of acknowledgement and forgiveness, offering them the release they so desperately sought. Finally, on a moonlit night, the spirits began to fade away, their apparitions growing fainter until they were nothing but distant memories. The lake, once haunted by their presence, grew silent, its surface undisturbed. James had witnessed the supernatural and come to understand that skepticism could not always explain the inexplicable. The campsite remained a place of eerie legends and a chilling reminder of the consequences of ignoring the warnings of the past. In the end, James had learned that the spirits of the lake were real, and that their presence served as a powerful reminder that the boundaries between the living and the dead were sometimes thinner than one could ever imagine. The lake held secrets that defied the rational mind, and the vengeful spirits had taught James a lesson he would never forget. The curse of the lone camper. Rachel, a determined and headstrong camper, had always been one to defy warnings and embrace the unknown. She was drawn to the idea of conquering the untouched wilderness, of challenging the very fabric of the supernatural. So, when she heard whispers of a cursed and shadowy campsite hidden in a forsaken valley, her curiosity was piqued, and she felt an irresistible pull to explore it. The valley had a reputation that sent shivers down the spines of the locals. It was said to be plagued by an ancient curse, a malevolent force that had claimed the lives of those who dared to enter. It was a place of darkness, where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred, and it was a place that beckoned to Rachel like a siren's call. Undeterred by the warnings, Rachel set out on her solo camping trip, determined to prove that the legends of the curse were mere superstition. She believed in her own rationality and her ability to confront the unknown and emerge unscathed. The Forsaken Valley was the perfect place to put her convictions to the test. As she arrived at the campsite, the atmosphere was oppressive, the air heavy with an ominous presence that seemed to permeate the very ground. The valley was shrouded in shadows, its ancient trees reaching out like skeletal fingers, their branches casting long, eerie silhouettes in the fading light. Rachel set up her camp, her determination unshaken by the oppressive atmosphere that surrounded her. As night fell, she stoked the campfire and settled in, determined to conquer her fear and prove that the curse was nothing more than a legend. However, as the moon ascended into the sky, the campsite seemed to come alive with a sinister energy. Rachel felt a presence, a malevolent force that seemed to have waited for her arrival. It was as if the valley itself had been stirred by her recklessness. Just as she began to doubt the wisdom of her decision, Rachel heard a soft, eerie whisper carried on the wind. It was a voice that seemed to emanate from the very shadows, a voice that sent chills down her spine. "You should not be here," it murmured, its words laced with a dark, ancient power. Rachel's heart raced as she looked around, trying to locate the source of the whisper. But there was no one in sight, and the valley remained silent and still. She felt as though she had stumbled into a realm where the supernatural was very real, a realm where the curse held sway. As the night deepened, Rachel's unease grew. She could hear faint, ghostly laughter in the distance, as if the valley was mocking her recklessness. She saw shadowy figures moving at the fringes of her vision, their forms indistinct and foreboding. The apparitions drew closer, their movements graceful and eerie. They were spectral and translucent, their eyes fixed on Rachel with a hunger that sent a shiver down her spine. She had never believed in ghosts, but now they seemed to surround her, their presence undeniable. Each night, the apparitions drew nearer, their voices filled with a haunting lament. They whispered of the curse, of the darkness that had claimed their souls, and they urged Rachel to leave the valley before it was too late. But she was determined to confront the supernatural and prove that the curse held no power over her. As she explored the campsite during the day, Rachel discovered an old journal hidden beneath a pile of rotting leaves. It was a journal that detailed the curse, a curse that had plagued the valley for centuries. It told of a vengeful spirit, a spirit wronged in life and seeking retribution in death. Rachel's heart sank as she read the journal, realizing that the curse was no mere legend. It was a malevolent force, a force that had claimed countless lives and was now fixated on her. She had become entangled in a supernatural web, a web that seemed impossible to escape. As the nights passed, the curse's grip on Rachel grew stronger. The apparitions drew nearer, their spectral hands reaching out to touch her, to pull her into the darkness. She could feel the malevolent force encroaching on her very soul, and she knew that she was running out of time. Finally, on a moonlit night, the curse revealed its origins. The vengeful spirit, wronged in life by those who had taken her land, had become a malevolent force, determined to exact her revenge on any who dared to enter the valley. Rachel had unwittingly become the target of the spirit's anger, and the curse was determined to claim her soul. As the curse tightened its grip, Rachel realized that she had been reckless in the face of supernatural warnings. She had ignored the wisdom of those who had come before her and now faced the consequences of her arrogance. The valley was a place of darkness and despair, and Rachel had become its prisoner. In the end, she had learned that some legends were more than mere superstition, that some curses were very real, and that the boundaries between the living and the dead were sometimes thinner than one could ever imagine. Rachel had become the latest victim of the curse, a chilling reminder of the consequences of ignoring the past. The forest's vengeance. Michael, an avid camper with a deep love for the great outdoors, had always sought solace in the wilderness. He believed in the healing power of nature, its beauty, and its ability to bring peace to the soul. But the sinister and twisted forest he ventured into on that fateful day was unlike any he had encountered before. This forest had an eerie, unnatural aura, a feeling of foreboding that seemed to seep from the very trees themselves. As Michael set up his campsite, he couldn't shake the unsettling sensation that the woods were watching him, that they held a deep and malevolent secret. The trees in this forest were different, twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like clawed fingers. They cast long, unnatural shadows that danced in the moonlight, and their leaves rustled with a sinister, almost mocking tone. Despite the ominous atmosphere, Michael believed that the forest's reputation was overblown. He had heard tales of a vengeful spirit that sought retribution for the destruction wrought by humans, but he dismissed them as mere folklore. He believed that the forest was simply a victim of superstition, and he was determined to prove it. As the night descended and the moon cast an eerie pallor over the forest, Michael settled by his campfire, confident that he would spend the night undisturbed. But the forest had other plans. The very ground beneath him seemed to tremble, and a chilling wind rustled through the trees. Michael heard whispers carried on the breeze, whispers that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the forest. "You should not have come," they murmured, a voice filled with anger and sorrow. Michael's heart quickened as he looked around, trying to locate the source of the whispers, but there was no one in sight, and the forest remained still and silent. It was as if the woods themselves were speaking to him, a voice of warning that he had chosen to ignore. As the night deepened, the forest seemed to come alive with a malevolent energy. Strange, ethereal lights flickered among the trees, casting an eerie, shifting glow. The ground trembled beneath Michael's feet, and he felt as though the forest itself was moving, closing in on him. The atmosphere grew oppressive, the air thick with a palpable sense of foreboding. It was then that Michael saw the first manifestation of the forest's vengeful spirit. It appeared as a spectral figure, its form translucent and shimmering. The spirit's eyes were filled with anger, its presence suffused with an otherworldly power. The spirit drew nearer, its movements graceful and eerie. It seemed to reach out to Michael, its fingers brushing against his skin with a cold, unnatural touch. He tried to back away, but the spirit's grip was unyielding, its presence overpowering. The spirit whispered words of anger and sorrow, recounting the countless trees that had been felled, the animals displaced, and the land desecrated by human hands. It spoke of the forest's suffering, of the pain inflicted upon it, and the spirit's desire for revenge. Michael, his heart pounding with fear, realized that the vengeful spirit was real, that the tales of the forest's retribution were more than mere folklore. He had become trapped in a realm where the boundaries between the living and the supernatural blurred, and he was now the target of the forest's anger. As the nights passed, the forest's vengeance grew relentless. The vengeful spirit pursued Michael with an unwavering determination, its presence becoming a constant torment. He could hear the whispers of the forest, the cries of the spirits of the land, and he began to understand the depth of the pain he had caused. Michael delved into the history of the forest, searching for answers to the spirit's anger. He discovered a tragic backstory that shed light on the forest's suffering. The land had once been a place of untouched beauty, a sanctuary for both nature and animals. But it had been ravaged by human hands, its pristine beauty marred by deforestation and pollution. The forest's vengeful spirit was the embodiment of the land's pain, a force seeking retribution for the atrocities committed against it. It was a voice of the environment, a voice of the earth itself, seeking to punish those who had shown disrespect for nature. As the spirit's relentless pursuit continued, Michael knew that he could no longer dismiss the forest's warnings. He had ignored the environmental consequences of his actions, and now he was facing the consequences of his recklessness. Determined to make amends, he conducted a series of rituals, hoping to appease the vengeful spirit and find a way to undo the damage done to the forest. Each night, he whispered words of acknowledgement and forgiveness, offering the spirit the release it so desperately sought. Finally, on a moonlit night, the forest's vengeful spirit began to fade away, its presence growing fainter until it was nothing but a distant memory. The forest, once plagued by anger and sorrow, grew silent, its twisted trees standing like sentinels in the night. Michael had witnessed the supernatural and come to understand that the boundaries between the living and the environment were sometimes thinner than one could ever imagine. The forest held secrets that defied the rational mind, and the vengeful spirit had taught him a powerful lesson about the consequences of disrespecting nature. In the end, he had learned that the environment could exact its own form of retribution, that the boundaries between the living and the natural world were sometimes blurred, and that the consequences of recklessness were not to be taken lightly. The forest's vengeance served as a chilling reminder of the importance of respecting the world around us and the environmental consequences of our actions. The unseen stalker in the heart of an ancient forest, where moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, Sarah, a seasoned camper, had set up her solitary campsite. The forest, shrouded in mystery, had always held a special place in her heart. The sound of rustling leaves and the gentle hoots of night owls were a familiar lullaby to her, a song that had lulled her to sleep countless times. But on this fateful night, the forest's embrace felt different. It was not the soothing presence she had grown accustomed to. Instead, it held a promise of terror, a sense that she was not alone in the wilderness. As Sarah settled in for the night, the solitude of the forest seemed to close in around her. The darkness was punctuated by the pale glow of the moon, casting eerie shadows that danced among the trees. She felt a growing unease, a sense that she was being watched from the shadows. Sarah had always been fearless, but as the night deepened, her confidence began to waver. She tried to dismiss the feeling of being observed as mere paranoia, but it lingered like a shadow on her consciousness. It was as if unseen eyes were fixed on her, tracking her every move. She peered into the inky darkness, searching for any sign of the source of her unease, but the forest remained silent. The only sound was the soft, whispering wind, carrying with it a feeling of foreboding. As she settled by the campfire, the warmth did little to ease her growing unease. The crackling flames cast long, flickering shadows that seemed to reach out like spectral fingers. She tried to concentrate on the sound of the fire, to drown out the sense of being watched. But then, a small, unsettling noise broke the silence. It was a soft, almost imperceptible rustling, the sound of something moving in the underbrush. Sarah's heart quickened, and she trained her gaze on the dark expanse of the forest. She saw nothing, but the sense of an unseen presence grew stronger. The feeling of being watched was now a tangible weight on her shoulders, a force that seemed to invade her very soul. Desperate to reassure herself, Sarah scanned the forest once more, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. And then she saw it, a pair of pale, ghostly eyes staring back at her from the darkness. The eyes belonged to a creature, a dark silhouette that melted into the obscurity of the forest. It was no ordinary animal, and Sarah knew that it was something more sinister. It watched her with a malevolent, almost mocking gaze, as if it reveled in her fear. She attempted to communicate with the intruder, but her words were met with silence. The creature remained still, its eyes fixed on her. It was an eerie standoff, a confrontation between Sarah and the unseen stalker. As the night wore on, the unseen stalker's presence did not wane. It continued to watch, to observe, and to unsettle. Sarah's paranoia grew with each passing moment, and she began to feel as though the forest had become a prison. The campfire, once a source of comfort, now cast long, grotesque shadows that danced around her. She could hear the creature's soft movements in the darkness, its presence an unrelenting reminder of her vulnerability. Determined to confront the stalker, Sarah ventured further into the forest, her flashlight piercing the inky blackness. But the unseen presence remained just beyond her reach, its eerie eyes following her every move. As dawn approached, Sarah was left with a growing sense of dread. The night had been a nightmarish ordeal, a relentless torment of being watched, of being invaded. She knew that she could not stay in the forest any longer, that the unseen stalker had claimed the solitude that was once hers. Desperate for answers, she conducted a thorough search of the forest, determined to uncover the stalker's identity. And then, hidden beneath a tangle of branches and leaves, she found it. A small, worn diary lay hidden in the underbrush, its pages filled with the ramblings of a deranged mind. It spoke of an obsession, an insatiable desire to watch, to observe, to invade the lives of others. It was the diary of the unseen stalker, a testament to its twisted desires. As Sarah read the diary, the horrifying truth became clear. The stalker had been a hermit, a recluse who had taken refuge in the forest to escape the chaos of the world. But the solitude had driven the hermit to madness, and he had become a twisted voyeur, a creature that found pleasure in invading the lives of others. The diary detailed Sarah's every move, her actions, her fears, and her growing sense of unease. It was a chilling record of her torment, a reminder that the unseen stalker had been watching her from the shadows. In the end, the forest's vengeance was not supernatural, but a very real and human one. The unseen stalker had invaded Sarah's privacy, had claimed her solitude as its own, and had left her with a chilling reminder of the consequences of trespassing on someone's peace. The forest remained an eerie, desolate place, but Sarah had learned a valuable lesson about the boundaries between solitude and invasion, about the consequences of disregarding someone's personal space. The unseen stalker's malevolent presence served as a stark reminder that even in the depths of the wilderness, one could never truly escape the reach of another. The sinister campfire tales. Daniel had always been an adventurous soul, seeking the thrill of the unknown. He often ventured into the wilderness, with nothing but the stars above and the campfire's crackling flames for company. But on this stormy, starless night, the remote campsite felt different, as if the very air crackled with an ominous energy. As the rain pelted down and the thunder rumbled in the distance, Daniel huddled close to his campfire. He had always been a master storyteller, and he relished the opportunity to regale his camping companions with chilling tales of the supernatural. But as the storm raged on, he decided to tell a different kind of story, one that would blur the line between fiction and reality. He began to speak of a cursed book, a tome filled with malevolent tales that could summon the characters and creatures from its pages. The campfire's glow illuminated his face, casting eerie shadows that danced in the night. Daniel described the cursed book's pages, their words written in an ancient, incomprehensible script. He spoke of the characters and creatures that had come to life, wreaking havoc on the world of their creator. As the stories poured from his lips, he saw a subtle shift in the atmosphere around him. The stormy night seemed to grow even darker, as if the very darkness were closing in. The campfire's flames flickered in response to his words, casting haunting, elongated shadows. Just as he began to question the wisdom of his storytelling, he heard a sound that froze his blood. It was a soft, eerie whisper carried on the wind. The words were the same as those he had just described, a chilling echo of his tale. But there was no one else at the campsite. The voices seemed to emanate from the very darkness itself. Daniel's heart quickened as he realized that the stories he had told were no longer confined to the realm of fiction. They had become a nightmarish reality. He tried to shake off the feeling of dread, to convince himself that it was mere coincidence. But as he continued his tale, the campfire's flames grew more erratic, their light casting strange, unnatural shapes on the ground. The whispering voices continued, their words becoming more distinct, more haunting. They spoke of the cursed book and the malevolent tales it contained. They described the characters and creatures that had come to life, their dark intentions and insatiable hunger for human souls. The campfire's flames danced in time with the voices, their erratic movements reflecting the story's growing intensity. Daniel felt as though he had opened a door to a realm of darkness, and the creatures from his tales were now crossing over into his world. As the night wore on, the atmosphere around him grew even more surreal. He saw movement in the shadows, subtle, sinister figures that seemed to lurk just beyond the campfire's glow. The creatures from his stories were coming to life, their forms taking shape in the darkness. Daniel realized that he had conjured the very nightmares he had described, that the power of his storytelling had brought them to life. The encroachment of the nightmarish characters continued, their eyes fixed on him with a hunger that sent a shiver down his spine. Desperate to put an end to the nightmare, Daniel tried to change the direction of his tales. He spoke of heroes who would vanquish the dark forces, of spells and incantations that would banish the malevolent creatures back into the cursed book. But his words had little effect. The creatures continued to draw closer, their forms growing more distinct, more menacing. It was as if the campsite had become a battleground, a place where fiction and reality collided. The climax of his tales approached, and the campsite was consumed by a surreal and chilling atmosphere. The storm raged on, the wind howling like a chorus of the damned, and the creatures from his stories drew nearer, their presence a constant torment. As the final words of his tales left his lips, the campfire's flames flared to life, their light blinding in its intensity. And then, with a deafening roar, the creatures were gone. They vanished into the night, their eerie whispers fading into silence. The campsite returned to its desolate, stormy state, the atmosphere still heavy with an ominous energy. Daniel realized that the power of his storytelling had summoned the creatures and characters from his tales, but it had also banished them back into the world of fiction. The campfire's flames danced in the night, casting haunting, elongated shadows that seemed to mock him. The storm raged on, its fury unabated, and the campsite felt like a place of surreal and nightmarish terror. Daniel had learned a powerful lesson about the consequences of toying with the supernatural, about the power of storytelling and the thin line between fiction and reality. He had conjured his own nightmares and witnessed the blurring of the boundaries between the two worlds. As he huddled by the campfire, the eerie, surreal atmosphere still clinging to the night, he knew that he had ventured into a realm of darkness that defied explanation. The sinister campfire tales had become a chilling reality, a reminder that the power of storytelling could bring both wonder and terror, and that the consequences of playing with the supernatural were not to be taken lightly. The forgotten ritual, the ancient woods had always held an allure for Emma, a sense of mystery that beckoned her deeper into their depths. She was a curious adventurer, drawn to the stories of the past, and her latest journey had led her to an eerie and cursed camping ground. The forest was a realm of shadows and secrets, with trees that seemed to whisper forbidden knowledge. Sinister symbols were etched into their bark, markings that spoke of a malevolent force bound to the land. Emma couldn't resist the temptation to explore, to uncover the truth behind the forest's dark history. As she ventured deeper into the woods, the air grew heavy with an oppressive sense of foreboding. The sinister symbols on the trees seemed to watch her, their presence an unspoken warning. But Emma's curiosity was relentless, and she pressed on. It was beneath a canopy of twisted, gnarled trees that she made her discovery. A small, worn book lay hidden in the underbrush, its pages filled with cryptic incantations and descriptions of a forbidden ritual. The book was a testament to a dark and ancient knowledge, a knowledge that should have remained buried. Emma's curiosity got the better of her, and she couldn't resist the urge to perform the ritual. She recited the incantations, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and fascination. The ritual called for the lighting of a black candle, and as its flickering flame illuminated the pages, a sense of dread washed over her. The ground beneath her trembled, and the air seemed to thicken with a malevolent energy. She knew that she had unleashed a force beyond her comprehension, a force that sought to claim her soul. As the night deepened, the camping ground became a place of terror. Strange, supernatural occurrences began to unfold. Shadows danced among the trees, their forms shifting and contorting in the moonlight. Sinister whispers filled the air, their words incomprehensible, but their intent unmistakable. The sinister symbols etched into the trees glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light, their presence a constant reminder of the malevolent force that had been awakened. Emma could feel its eyes on her, an unseen presence that watched and waited, desperate to unravel the curse that she had unwittingly unleashed. Emma delved into the book's pages once more, searching for a way to reverse the ritual. But the knowledge was as dark as the forest itself, and there was no turning back. As the nights passed, the supernatural occurrences escalated. Emma was tormented by nightmarish visions, her dreams a realm of horror and despair. The malevolent force seemed to grow stronger, its presence a constant torment. The camping ground had become a realm of ritualistic horror, a place where the boundaries between the living and the supernatural blurred. Emma felt as though she had ventured into a world of darkness, a world where ancient curses held sway. In her quest for answers, Emma uncovered a chilling revelation about the curse's origins. The forest had once been a place of dark rituals, a site where unspeakable acts had been committed in the name of forbidden knowledge. The malevolent force had been bound to the land, a guardian of the cursed knowledge. As the malevolent force closed in on her, Emma knew that her curiosity had led her to a perilous crossroads. She had meddled with ancient, forbidden knowledge, and now she was paying the price. The curse sought to claim her soul, to make her a part of the dark history of the forest. Desperate to escape her nightmarish fate, Emma made a final, desperate attempt to reverse the ritual. She recited the incantations once more, hoping against hope that it would be enough to banish the malevolent force. The ground trembled, and the air grew thick with tension as she lit the black candle. The flames flickered, casting eerie shadows on the camping ground. But this time, there was no malevolent force to answer the call. As the night grew still and the sinister symbols on the trees faded, Emma knew that the curse had been broken. The malevolent force had been banished, and the forest had returned to its sinister, ancient slumber. Emma had learned a powerful lesson about the consequences of curiosity, about the danger of meddling with forbidden knowledge. The forgotten ritual had been a nightmarish journey into a world of darkness, a world where ancient curses held sway. The camping ground remained a place of mystery and malevolence, a testament to the power of the past. Emma had narrowly escaped the clutches of the malevolent force, and as she left the forest behind, she knew that the boundaries between the living and the supernatural were thinner than one could ever imagine. The forgotten ritual served as a chilling reminder of the consequences of toying with the dark and ancient forces that dwelled in the shadows.